The moonlight shows us for what we really are. We're not among the living, so we cannot die, but neither are we dead. For too long I've been parched of thirst and unable to quench it. Too long I've been starving to death and haven't died. I feel nothing, not the wind on my face, nor the spray of the sea, nor the warmth of a woman's flesh. You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one.
Oh my gosh. I want
the way that you instantly collapsed as soon as I started.
I want all of the listeners to know who cannot see us right now. The very second that Geneva started talking, I fell over on my table with laughter. Oh my gosh. That's the best opening we've ever done. I don't think we'll ever top that.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. I certainly don't think I could ever top that.
That was that was so good. I was not expecting that from you at all. Wow.
Just channeling all that undead pirate energy.
Honestly, you should be Captain Barbossa for, I don't know, for Halloween or something.
Welcome to Your Pick, a film podcast. I'm Geneva.
And I'm Tatum.
We are two friends who love movies and love sharing them with each other. Each week, we take turns picking a film that is close to our hearts and talk about why it moves us, to tears, to laughter, and everything in between. We celebrate the craft of filmmaking, as well as the unique and personal ways we find meaning in the movies we watch. All right, after that incredible opening.
Really, that was incredible. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy we started that way.
Thank you.
Also,
very much.
there's no other quote you could have chosen.
Truly. I mean, there are so many great quotes in this movie, but my mind just instantly went to this one, and I think it was correct.
You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. So good.
Just sums it all up, really.
So good.
So before we get into the movie, which I know we're both itching to discuss, do you want to tell the people what you've been watching this week?
Yeah. So I want to start by saying, obviously, I'm sick, guys. So Geneva is amazing, and she's going to do her darndest editing this episode. But if you hear lots of coughs because Geneva can't cut all of them out, please bear with me because I am ill. But anyway, yeah, so since our last episode, I have watched two incredible movies. I rewatched them. The first one was I rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I have not seen that movie since it originally came out. I saw Across the Spider-Verse this summer 3 times in theaters. It was such a good time. And so I wanted to go back kind of to where it all began and watch this movie. And it was a good time. It was really interesting to see how the animation style evolved from this one to the next one. Because the animation is obviously incredible in this movie. But they really took it to 1,000,000 for the second one. And so yeah, I mean, being introduced to Miles Morales and kind of this whole Spider-Verse, it's just a really fun time. It's a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed it. I watched it with a friend who is a huge Marvel fan, which I am not. But I do like the Spider-Verse movies, and so it was fun to watch it with her. And we had a really good time. So I'm really glad I got to rewatch it. This could be a controversial thing to say, but I do like the second one better. Not that this is a bad movie. On Letterboxd, I rated the second one 5 stars. This one I rated 4.5. But if I could rate it 4.9, I would do that. But yeah, it's a really great movie. It just feels a little bit less. I don't know. I feel like the introduction to the other Spider-Mans that exist in this movie, the pig one, the Nicolas Cage one, I just feel like they're kind of sprinkled in there. I wanted more of them, and I remembered there being more of them. And I watched it and I was like, oh, they really show up at the end and they're not really around for very much. But I mean, that's a very extreme like nitpick. But I just really admire.
Just the craziness of this movie that you're just like the other Spider-Mans, the pig one, the Nicolas Cage one.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But yeah, I really love how empowering these movies are to all different types of people. I mean, we have a super badass Aunt May in this movie who, you know, she's not old, but you don't typically see older women like this kicking ass in movies, you know, but they give her these awesome roles where these moments where she's fighting and she has these great lines, and there's just so many different people of color, and they expand upon this in the second one, and when they bring in like, you know, Indian culture and a pregnant woman who's still fighting, you know, it's really cool how inclusive these movies are and expansive, showing how many different types of people there are and how they are all capable of being superheroes and like worthy of being represented on screen. So I just really admire these movies a lot. So yeah, I could tie it into a whole Marvel rant, which I'm not going to do. But these movies really separate themselves from the pack, in my opinion. And I'm very excited for the third one. I will say, though, one of the critiques of the second film that I did understand this time around after watching the first one, it does seem a little bit uncharacteristic that Peter Parker, the one voiced by, what's his name? Who plays Nick in New Girl?
Is it Jake Johnson?
Yeah.
Jake Johnson.
It doesn't make sense to me that he would betray Miles Morales in the second one after rewatching the first one. I'm like, that doesn't fully connect for me, but that's fine. So anyway, yeah, I watched Into the Spider-Verse, and then the other movie that I watched was, I rewatched, I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but one of my favorite directors of all stinking time is Paul Thomas Anderson. One of my favorite movies of all time is Magnolia, which he made when he was like 25 years old or 27 or something like that, which like I will never understand. But anyway, I rewatched the movie There Will Be Blood. It is a perfect film. It is one of the best films of the 21st century. It is one of the best lead performances of all time. It is just, it's absolutely incredible. I'm not going to go on and on and on about it because I could do that. We'll talk about it on this podcast at some point. But from top to bottom, I mean, the acting, the directing, the cinematography, the costumes, the score, I'm forgetting other things right now, but everything about it, the hair and makeup, like it is exceptional in every single way. And it's a movie that I rewatch every couple years because I don't want to watch it too frequently because I don't want it to like lose its impact because it's a very impactful film. But it's an incredible character study of a man who is greedy and tortured and complex and hateful. And Paul Dano plays this really weird, dopey, very charismatic priest guy of a church of his own creation who has his own hidden agendas, and the two of them going back to back of trying to like undermine each other and be like, you're actually pretending to be something that you're not, and I'm going to call you out on it. And they go back and forth about that. It's just, it's a phenomenal film. And I think like I've seen this on a lot of, every once in a while I look up lists of like, you know, Oscar winners for Best Picture and what are the years where the movie that won Best Picture shouldn't have won Best Picture because this movie should have. And this is one of those years that comes up on a lot of lists. And I agree. This was the year that No Country for Old Men won Best Picture. I'm not necessarily the person to talk about No Country for Old Men because it's a Western and I don't really like Westerns, which has been well established on this podcast. But even taking my own bias out of it, I mean, There Will Be Blood is a miraculous achievement. So anyway, yeah, I rewatched that movie and it was absolutely astounding. I'm taken aback every single time. So if you've never seen There Will Be Blood, watch it. If you haven't seen it in a long time, rewatch it, because even if the whole movie sucked, which it doesn't, but even if the whole movie sucked, Daniel Day-Lewis's performance alone is like, it brings down the house. So, yeah, that was a really great rewatch that I'm happy that I sat down and did it. So anyway, those are the two things I watched this week. Both really great. So yeah. Anyway, that's what I've been watching.
I really need to get around to watching No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood, which like I'm constantly, I think we've talked about before, I'm constantly confusing the two. I'm like, which one is PTA and which one is the Coen brothers? Yeah. There's
potential for you. I mean, we can talk about this when we talk about this on the podcast, because we will, again, talk about it at some point. But there is potential, I think, and I hope you prove me wrong, but there is potential for you to watch There Will Be Blood and appreciate the craft of it, but actually not like the story. Because I feel like you struggle with unlikable characters, and
it depends on the type of unlikability.
Okay. Yeah, because he's very much so a selfish, unlikable person.
Because like obviously I love All That Jazz, which has an extremely unlikable protagonist.
Yeah.
But then there are certain types of unlikable protagonists where I'm just like, I don't know why anyone would want to spend time with this person. You know, they're not compelling to me. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I hope you prove me wrong. But I do think there is potential there for you to maybe be like, I totally admire the craft of this movie, but because I don't like the character, I can't get fully behind it. But
Got it. Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, we'll have to see. In terms of my own watching, I actually watched a lot this week. So
did you? I haven't been on Letterboxd, so I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and not spend too much time on any one thing in particular. But so I rewatched 3 movies. I rewatched the Alfred Hitchcock movie Dial M for Murder, which is a pretty good set in one location crime thriller. Definitely recommend. I rewatched the movie A Simple Favor, which came out like 5 or 6 years ago, which I really love. It's so campy and trashy and so much fun, really well made. And honestly, genuinely, I think one of the best costumed films of the last 5 to 10 years. The costuming in it is really, really good. Blake Lively is just very charismatic and delightful in it. So really enjoy that. Would recommend that if you want just something really silly and fun to sit down with. I rewatched The Best Years of Our Lives, which is a immediately post-war drama, which excellent, perfect film for me.
That's a movie that is handpicked for Geneva.
Yes, it really is. It kind of sums up everything. sums me up in one film. It's one of those movies where I sat down being like, I'm not sure what I want to watch, but Best Years of Our Lives is on Prime right now, and let me just watch the first half hour, because the first half hour is so good. Turns out the first half hour I was thinking of is actually the first hour of the film, and once I've committed an hour, I may as well commit the other 2 hours. Yep. So I ended up watching a 3-hour film last night.
Oh, you watched it last night? Dang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've seen that movie once before. I think I was too young to get it, honestly. Because I think back on it and I'm like, I didn't dislike it, but I was just very lukewarm on it. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if I were to watch it now, I would appreciate it more. I just think I wasn't in the right, like,
the headspace for it.
At the time. Because it was one of those things where I think it was on my list a few years ago where it was like, if you're a film person, you have to see these movies. And I think I just like popped it in, and I don't know. It just wasn't like a good day.
Yeah, I could see it not grabbing you. I mean, it is very long, again, which I think it totally earns. But if you're not as into the subject matter, I could see it not really working. But I love it. I think it's excellent. Possibly we'll do an episode on it one day. We'll see. Okay, but in terms of new films that I watched this week. So first up, I watched a movie from the mid-'60s called The Cincinnati Kid with Steve McQueen, about
poker players in 1920s New Orleans. Honestly, I was kind of bored by it. I love Steve McQueen, and Margaret's in it. I love her. Carl Malden's in it. I love him, but it just didn't really grab me all that much. It's kind of one of those movies where it's like, you need to empathize with this 60s protagonist because he's young and cool and hot and he wants to do a thing, but he's kind of an unlikable character. He's a jerk to his girlfriend. He doesn't really seem to have any direction. So yeah, I don't know. It was fine. I wasn't crazy about it. I watched a movie called The Letter, which is one of several collaborations between Bette Davis and director William Wyler, and they're just a really great team. He really brought a lot of what made her really special as an actress out of her. She always spoke very highly about him as a director who really understood his performers and understood what she was capable of. This is not my favorite collaboration that I've seen between the two of them, but it's still pretty good. It's a sort of noirish drama about a woman who she shoots a man who she claims tried to attack her, but then later a letter turns up that maybe indicates that she's not actually telling the truth. And so it's her and her lawyer and her husband all trying to kind of figure out what to do next. And I won't give too much away, but it's a pretty good watch if you like Bette Davis and you want to see her give a really great performance. Next, I watched a movie called The Birdcage, which was so delightful, and I loved it so much. Tatum, have you seen The Birdcage?
I have not. I've actually never heard of The Birdcage.
Oh my gosh, you need to watch it. It is a 90s comedy. I believe it's based on a play. It's directed by Mike Nichols, who did The Graduate.
Oh, no, The Birdcage.
Yes.
It's in my watch list. I have not seen it, but I really, really want to watch it. I think I saw it somewhere a few weeks ago, like online somewhere, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to see this movie. And I immediately added it to my list, but I haven't gotten around to watching it yet.
Okay. Yes. Please tell me when you do. I'm very excited to hear what you think. I loved it. I thought it was hysterical. The premise of it is it's about a gay couple played by Robin Williams and Nathan Lane. Robin Williams owns a drag club. Nathan Lane is kind of the star drag artist. They've been together for years, but Robin Williams has a son by, I guess, a previous relationship. And the son announces that he's getting married to this woman who is the daughter of this really conservative right-wing senator. And the senator is going through a political scandal. And so he decides, well, we're going to go and through a series of misunderstandings, he thinks that the boy that their daughter is engaged to is the son of some sort of fancy Kennedy-esque, old money family that would make them look good by association. And so they're like, well, we're going to go and meet them. And so there's all this mistaken identity and trying to hide and pretend to be who you're not in order to make people like you. And it's so funny. It's so sweet and heartwarming. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's really, really delightful.
I'm so glad you saw it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it probably soon. So we'll have to talk about it after that happens.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so then the last thing that I saw was a movie called The Last Picture Show, which is a Peter Bogdanovich film. I believe it was before Paper Moon. I think it's kind of his the first movie that really put him on the map as a director.
Baby Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, Baby Jeff Bridges is in it. It is basically about this small town in, I think, Texas that is kind of fading away, and it focuses on a couple of teenagers who are just graduating high school. They kind of have their romantic dramas. They're into this one young woman who is kind of figuring herself out. She's kind of going around and sleeping with as many people as possible because she has self-esteem issues. There's one of them gets involved with an older woman and has an affair with her. And there's a mentor figure who owns the local pool hall and cafe and picture hall, which is kind of the social center of the town. And I really, really love this movie. I did not expect to, because a couple people in my life have seen it and were not impressed with it.
Me being one of them.
Tatum being one of them, yes. And I can see that very much. I think, Tatum, you said you're issue with it was that everyone keeps making terrible decisions, which
Yeah.
is correct.
I was just shouting at my screen. I was like, you could just not do that. Like, you could just not do that. Like, why? No, you're creating so many problems. Just don't do that thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it was they were situations where I was like, it's very clearly, like, it's very obvious that the decision you're making is the wrong decision. Like, it wasn't something where it's like, oh, well, maybe. I'm like, no. If I were in your situation, it's very clear. I should not do this, but you're doing it anyway.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, but for me, it really worked as a movie that's just about loneliness and the desire for human connection and affirmation from other people, and the impact that we all have on one another, and the ways that we can either make other people's lives happier and richer and better, or that we can make them worse. And the way that the characters, they make mistakes and they grow and they discover things about each other. They look back on their lives and their memories as the older characters look back on their lives and who they were as children versus who they were today. They extend grace for one another when they hurt each other. It just really, really moved me. I was tearing up a little bit at the end. I did not cry, but I did tear up a little bit.
Did you know that, like, all of the main cast, every single one of them was nominated for an Oscar?
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, all 4 of them.
Oh, wow. Cloris Leachman I did know, because Be Kind Rewind, the excellent YouTube channel, recently had a video on her, which is one of the reasons that I was especially interested in watching this movie.
I don't think Polly Platt was not involved with this movie, right?
No, she was. Yeah.
Oh, she was?
She was involved
Okay.
with all of his early films.
Okay. I wasn't sure if she was involved in this one.
She may actually have even been the one to find this novel and suggest it to him.
I feel like she's also very much a part of his process when it comes to casting people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so. She was actually the one who found Tatum O'Neal and helped, put her forward for casting in Paper Moon.
Whenever we talk about a Peter Bogdanovich film, I will be bringing up Polly Platt.
Oh, as you should, yes. Any film that she was involved with, which she very much was in his first several. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, The Last Picture Show. I recommend it.
So what is that? Was that like 7 things in 1 week? Did you watch a new thing every day?
I just counted it up. There were multiple days where I watched 2 things in one day. So
sick.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love those weeks when they happen. I haven't had one of those weeks in a while, but when they I'm like, this was a good week. These were good life decisions.
Yep. And I just went to the library and rented like 3 more things for me to watch. So I'm looking forward to those as well.
Support your local libraries, everybody.
Yeah, libraries are great. I watched at least half of these via the library, if not more.
Love it.
All right. Well, let us move on to the subject of today's episode. Today on the show, we are discussing Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl from 2003, directed by Gore Verbinski and starring Keira Knightley, Orlando Bloom, Johnny Depp, and Jeffrey Rush. The film centers on several characters, including Elizabeth Swann, the daughter of the British governor of a Caribbean island, and Will Turner, the blacksmith's apprentice who loves her from afar. When Elizabeth is kidnapped by pirates, Will teams up with the mysterious but charismatic Captain Jack Sparrow to rescue her. This takes the 3 of them on a delightful swashbuckling adventure involving pirate curses, treasure, skeletons, sword fights, trickery, and lots of rum. Or the lack thereof. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl was a huge success at the time and basically became a whole cultural phenomenon. But few could have predicted that beforehand. The movie was loosely inspired by a popular pirate ride at Disneyland, shout out, but the studio was wary about making a project involving pirates because a lot of recent pirate movies, most notably Cutthroat Island from 1995, had been big flops. Much credit for its success can go to director Gore Verbinski, who wanted the film to be a throwback to the swashbuckling films of the Hollywood Golden Age, as well as to screenwriters Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. Verbinski also wanted to lean into the things that made the ride so memorable for children, namely that it was both funny and genuinely scary. Much of the film was shot on location in the Caribbean or on elaborate practical sets built in California. Rather than romanticizing the era, the actors playing the pirates were given costumes, makeup, and prosthetics that emphasized the griminess and scarring that pirates of the time would have had. Industrial Light and Magic supplied the CGI effects for the skeleton pirate crew. The iconic score was written by Klaus Bedalt, a collaborator of Hans Zimmer, with some of the themes heavily inspired by Zimmer's own score for Gladiator.
I actually, I didn't know that, which I'm really glad that you wrote that there, because I remember when I was younger. So I saw this movie before I saw Gladiator because, you know, I was young. Not that, I mean, there were lots of movies I watched when I was young, but, you know, whatever. But so I saw Pirates first, and then I remember later when I was a little older, when I saw Gladiator, I was like, wait, that's the that's the same score as Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, what is that? Like, I remember being so confused because we didn't really, like, IMDb wasn't really a thing at the time, so I couldn't really, like, look up information about, like, okay, which one came out first and who composed which one. All I just remember thinking was, like, wait, that is the Pirates of the Caribbean theme. So I didn't know this fun fact that, like, it sounds like he's pretty open about the fact that it was actually inspired by Gladiator. Like, he's not claiming that it's not.
I didn't read any quotes by him, but I think it would be pretty impossible to deny. Plus, Hans Zimmer himself was, I believe, involved in the music production on this film, even if he's not credited as the composer, and then he took over as the credited composer in the sequel. So it's all Hans Zimmer, even if Klaus Badalt was the, you know, taking the lead on composing the score for this film. Yeah. Zimmer was still heavily involved in it. And yeah, I don't think there's anyone who's out there saying, no, it was completely original and not at all inspired by Gladiator, because they sound very similar.
I will just throw this out there. If any of you guys listen to film scores, I would argue that Hans Zimmer's score for At World's End is one of the best scores of the 21st century. I listened to that score, like, album a lot. It was one of my big study ones in college, and I still listen to it quite often. It's really, really good.
Yeah, the score for all of these movies is excellent. Like the Davy Jones theme from Dead Man's Chest is excellent. The fourth movie, the one with the mermaids, has some issues, but the actual mermaids theme is really, really good.
I thought about that while watching this movie, because granted, I haven't seen any of the movies beyond the first three, but I knew that one of them had mermaids in it. And so in that one line in this movie where Gillette is like, oh yeah, a mermaid flopped up on deck and gave us the whole story, I was like, little do you know, mermaids actually exist in this world.
Too bad he didn't get to see it. Okay, so just a little bit more about the film. So casting, in my opinion, is also a huge part of why the film was so successful. Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom obviously were big up-and-comers at the time. Keira Knightley was coming off of Bend It Like Beckham, and Bloom obviously playing the Legolas in the Lord of the Rings films. Jeffrey Rush was apparently the second choice for Barbossa after Robert De Niro turned down the role. Rush, rather than playing the role as a one-dimensional villain, reportedly decided that his character sees himself as the hero of his own movie and created an elaborate backstory explaining why his character does the things that he does.
Who reached out to Robert De Niro for this? He's way too serious to take on him. I mean, granted, he did do, like, Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers, but,
well,
like,
I was going to say, he actually plays the role of a pirate captain, a very over-the-top, campy, like, pirate captain in the movie Stardust a few years later. And so finding out this piece of information, I wonder if he turned it down and then saw how successful the movie was and was like, dang it, let me try and get in there on whatever other similar role that I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could have pulled it off. I just, you know, because I hear you say that. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think that could have worked, but I just don't see him accepting a role like that.
Well, I don't think he'd fully moved into his kind of comedy era yet. I might be misremembering exactly when he started really moving into that, you know, studio comedy era of his career. But at this era, I don't really think of him as doing roles like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, for most people, the breakout star of this film was the character of Captain Jack Sparrow. Originally, the idea was for Sparrow to be a classic roguish anti-hero in the mold of someone like Burt Lancaster, who had starred in 1952's The Crimson Pirate. Actors considered for the role included Hugh Jackman, Jim Carrey, Michael Keaton, and Christopher Walken. However, Johnny Depp was cast in the role. When Johnny Depp was cast in the role, Depp decided to lean into the idea of pirates as the rock stars of their day. He famously modeled his performance after Rolling Stones member Keith Richards, who was later cast in the sequels to play Jack Sparrow's father. Depp's unexpected performance choices gave the film some edge, and his chemistry with Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Kevin McNally, and Jeffrey Rush provided an energy that made the film unique. All right, so Pirates of the Caribbean. In terms of my relationship to this movie, oh man, I adore this movie so much. It's definitely a movie I grew up with. I did not see it in theaters. My parents, but I saw it shortly afterwards. I think my parents probably saw it in theaters together and then thought, well, this is okay. You know, we might want to show it to them at home so that if there's anything a little bit questionable, we can fast forward through that. But for the most part, they considered it to be fine. So we watched it on DVD together. And I vividly remember when they suggested watching it, I was in this little like, ugh, sounds like a boys movie. I'm not going to like this. And then I fell in love with it. And just for the next couple of years, every time me and my brothers and my friends all got together, we would just be playing Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, we'd be having sword fights, we'd be taking on characters from the movie, rewriting the story. It was just such a huge part of my imaginative landscape as a child. I've watched all of the sequel movies in theaters except for the last one. Kind of diminishing returns there, although there's still good things about them. I had very strong opinions about the sequel movies when they first came out. I do remember
a lot of people did.
Yeah.
People were so invested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do remember how excited I was, though, when they brought back Barbossa at the end of the second movie. I was basically jumping up and down in the theater.
So tell me, what's become of Jack Sparrow? Then he eats an apple and like juices all over his mouth.
Oh my gosh, he got his apple! Ah!
What's become of Jack?
So yeah, I've just watched this movie a million times, and it's one of those movies that it is a long movie, but you can just throw it on and it's so much fun, and I can recite almost every line by heart. And if I could give anything to play an Elizabeth Swann role or possibly be kidnapped by pirates and go through a similar adventure, I would gladly do it. And yeah, I love this movie. They really don't. It's a classic. They really don't make them like this anymore. Like movies like this, really.
I agree.
You only have a few that come out and just have this particular combination of excellent chemistry with all of the actors and a director and screenwriters who really understand the tone and how to balance it being light and fun and exciting with also having kind of that dangerous edge. And
well, I also feel like actors in a cast that are really invested, like, because it sounds like Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush, like they treated this like I was gonna say like an Oscar nominated role, but like literally Johnny Depp was nominated for, but like they treated it like these are real characters and we're gonna do our work to like make them full rounded. And who are they? Whereas I feel like a lot of other, you know, maybe soon to be franchise movies or entertainment flicks, they're not really taken as seriously by the cast, I don't feel like, at least nowadays. And I think it shows here. And I don't think it's just Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush. I mean, there's so many people that are really going all out here, but also not taking it too seriously. Like they're having so much fun, and I love it. Yeah. And it is a, in my opinion, basically perfect script for what this movie is, that is so intricate, and the world that it creates is so well thought out. And yet this was before the era really got started, where every studio thinks, if we're making a blockbuster, we need to somehow spin it into a franchise. And obviously that's what ended up happening. They ended up making a lot of sequels. But when you watch it, you don't get the feeling, oh, we're trying to set something up because we want to make another movie. We want to make 5 more movies. And, 3 movies later, we're hoping that this can pay off. You're watching it and thinking,
oh, they put this little detail in there because it enriches the world. And it's just an incredibly textured and vast world that all is consistent. There are so many characters that only have a few lines, and yet you remember them years later, you know?
I really like to, and people could debate me on this, and that's fine. I'm a lot bigger of a fan of Dead Man's Chest and Outworld's End than a lot of other people are. But I don't know if this movie was created and it was such a success that they decided to branch off of it, or if they always wanted it to be more than just one. It sounds like maybe the former. They just made one and then they were like, oh, this was a success, let's make more. But I really like in the following movies how they pay so much attention to the first one that it's like, oh, that thing that's on Johnny Depp's head, that's actually one of the 9 pieces of 8. And like this compass that doesn't point north is actually like a huge thing. And these whole things of like people saying, oh, so-and-so was lost to Davy Jones' locker. And like, you know, Will being like, I'll be lost to Davy Jones' locker. And you just think, oh, okay, Davy Jones' locker is just kind of like a pirate thing that people say. But then Davy Jones' locker, they actually make it into a whole thing in the next movies, and like Bootstrap Bill. And, you know, they take even the most minor details and they expand upon them and really build out this world and make it feel like it's not just this one story that exists. Like there's hundreds of stories that exist because this is a whole world, you know?
Yeah.
And I like how in this first movie they just have there's so many cool little details of like little props and little costumes, and because like you said, they're just there to make the world feel more real. But because there's so many of those in the following movies, they were able to like tap into so much because there was so much already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't hate the fourth movie as much as a lot of people do. There are certain things about
The
it
fourth
I really
movie?
enjoyed. The fourth movie.
Okay, I haven't
don't think
seen it.
you've seen. But one of the things that I think was a real mistake with it was taking Gore Verbinski off of it, or maybe he didn't want to direct it. I don't really know, but pretty
Is that
sure.
the Javier Bardem Penelope Cruz one?
Yes, with the mermaids. Okay. Yeah,
Gotcha.
and I think that's just because you can tell how much love Verbinski has for this world, and you know this entire landscape that has been created with all of these different interacting characters and getting into the nitty gritty of pirate lore and things like that. Like he clearly cared so much about it, and he did such a great job of establishing that tone early on.
Yeah, I think that this movie, and in my opinion, the second and third one, like these people, they feel like pirates. They don't feel like cartoon characters. Whereas like, given what I've heard about the fourth and fifth one, like Jack Sparrow just becomes a cartoon. Like he's almost a parody of himself, you know? And that's just given what I've heard. I haven't seen them. But yeah, I don't know. I just like that he feels like in this movie, he's just Jack Sparrow. Like he's a guy who happens to be a pirate who happens to be like drunk all the time. But he's not like,
But
he's
he has
not like
incredible luck.
yeah, but he's not like a cartoon. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. So Tatum, can you share a bit about your relationship to Pirates of the Caribbean? Because I know that it is also a huge part of your backstory.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't tell based off of everything that I just said, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I am a big fan of I'm going to say trilogy instead of franchise because, again, I haven't seen the fourth and fifth one. So I am a huge fan of this trilogy. I don't know if I've ever said this out loud, but I think it's actually true. One of my favorite things about myself is that I am a huge nerd when it comes to like swords and like anything that has sword fighting in it. I am like obsessed, you know, fantasy worlds, historical, medieval worlds, like, you know, anything like that. I get super into it. I've always said one of these days I'm going to take like a long sword class. I'm going to learn how to sword fight. I will take it. But anyway, so this movie kind of was one of the first things that I saw that really tapped into that nerdiness for me. I had seen The Lord of the Rings prior to this, and I was already a huge fan of, you know, those types of vibes and like swordplay and all of that stuff. And so the fact that this had that and the fact that it also had Orlando Bloom, I was like really excited to watch it. I also did not see this in theaters. I was quite young, and so I don't think my parents were like wanting to, they just didn't know, a little bit uncertain. And so I remember my grandma, she had a lake house at the time, and, you know, grandmas always have like the fun stuff, you know, like grandmas have the little snacks that you can't have at home. And like my grandma had cable and we didn't have cable, and she had all the fun VHSs, you know? And so at the lake house, she had the Pirates of the Caribbean VHS. And so every single time we went there, me and my sister would sit down, you know, put this movie in the player and watch it. And I absolutely loved this movie. I've probably seen it. I mean, I haven't watched it in a while, because it's not really a movie that I necessarily like crave watching all the time, because I've seen it. I mean, I've probably seen this movie over 20 times. Like, I watched it so much when I was young. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my relationship with it. I loved it so much. I did go to the midnight premieres of Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, for my sister's 16th birthday party, because she was also, you know, all in on this with me. She had a Pirates of the Caribbean theme for her 16th birthday. I dressed up as Calypso. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, had a bunch of Pirates of the Caribbean posters on our wall because we shared a bedroom. Like, I was very much so into this world. So I will say, watching it this time around, because again, I haven't seen it in a while, I was so fascinated because I was like, this really feels like a kid's movie. You know what I mean? Like, when I was younger, because I was a kid, it didn't feel like a kid's movie to me because I was a kid. So I didn't really know like kids movie versus not kids movie. And so watching it this time around, I was like, oh, this has a lot of like weird, campy kinds of jokes and like moments that are like, this is just a silly kid thing to have in, you know, it was just strange. I was like, this is way more of a kid movie than I remember it being. But that didn't make me like it less. I just was like, I don't recall it giving me this type of vibe. But it was a super fun time. So I had some friends over last night, and they didn't leave until like 10:30, and I hadn't watched this movie yet. And so I was like, okay, I need to watch this before recording tomorrow in the morning. And so I checked the runtime, because at this point I was starting the movie at like 11, and I was like, oh man, this movie's 2.5. I'm like, okay, I need to watch it. Like, it's fine. And so I put it in, and I was fully anticipating just like falling asleep and being like, oh my gosh, like I'm watching this super late. It's so long. Let's hurry this up. It felt like it was 45 minutes. Like, this movie really, the pacing is so good. I was like entertained from start to finish. I was never bored. I did not fall asleep. Like, I remember it hit a point and I was like, oh my gosh, we're almost at the end. Does that mean I've been watching this for 2 hours already? Like, what? And I think that's a testament to this movie and its quality. So, yeah, I love this film. I think this is a movie that, like, you know, if I were to have kids or if I get permission from my sister when my niece is old enough, I'm like, I would show this movie to like a 9-year-old, you know, like it's just, it has a little bit of scariness, but it's not like, oh my gosh, you're going to be like, you know, losing sleep because the skeletons are so scary, because they're kind of silly, you know, like their eyes are falling out and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm going on and on. I mean, I have such my relationship with this movie is just so like big, and there's so much, you know, under that umbrella that I don't really know like where to begin and where to end. But yeah, I will say I questioned watching this time. I was like, I don't know, is Orlando Bloom a good actor? Because, you know, he very famously has like no lines in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, it's kind of an internet joke at this point, which I think is hilarious. But then in this movie, I'm like, I can't tell if he's a bad actor or if just like he's so committed to the character of Will as this like doe-eyed, you know, little boy who's like obsessed with this teenage girl from his childhood and like is like super passionate about, oh, like pirates and blah, blah, blah. He's completely obsessed with treasure. It's not true. I'm not obsessed with treasure. But I don't know. I did find myself thinking that this time. I'm like, I don't know if I actually like his performance in this movie, but it kind of works because Will is kind of just like a lame guy who like wants to be at the table with the big boys, but like doesn't really belong there.
I mean, I would 100% agree with that. I don't think Orlando Bloom's a particularly great actor, or at least not at this time. Maybe he's matured quite a bit. But I think his blankness kind of really works for the character, because you do need that. You do need someone to counterbalance the craziness and eccentricities of Jack Sparrow. You need someone who's just kind of pretty and earnest and good and wants to rescue the damsel. You know, it really works. The balance between the two of them is perfect, even if objectively speaking, it's not the greatest performance of all time. It probably would not, the balance probably would be off if he was giving a more sort of, you know, a complex performance, I guess, you know?
Yeah, I feel like watching this movie, it's hard to not compare Orlando Bloom with Keira Knightley. And I feel like watching this, Keira Knightley, it's like very clearly, oh, she's gonna be a star. And then Orlando Bloom, it's like, oh, he's pretty. You know, yeah. It's like, it was just interesting, like, taking that away this time. I'm like, again, like, because his character kind of works for this movie, and like you said, he balances things out, it doesn't really bother me that much. But, like, if we were to take Will out and Orlando Bloom's performance, like, and plop him into another movie, I'd be like, yeah, no, this is not the best performance. But all that being said, like, I love Orlando Bloom. I mean, the fact that he has been in two of my favorite, like, franchises of all time that were formative of my childhood, like, I love him to death, and I will always love him, regardless of whether or not he's a good or bad actor. But yeah, I just found that interesting this time around. But it sounds like you're kind of on the same page.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think between the two of them, Keira Knightley carries a lot of the load, but she is also in a position within that story where she's doing a lot of acting on her own or with other characters, and there are choices that she makes that really require some more complexities to her. You know, she makes some choices where you're like, I don't know if that's really the smartest decision, but it makes a whole lot of sense for her character and what she wants. So, yeah.
I feel like, and this is going to sound like a super hoity-toity thing to say, and if there's any actors listening to this, they're probably going to laugh at me. So, like, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's probably true. I'm not an actor. But I feel like Keira Knightley is acting, whereas Orlando Bloom is, like, reacting. Like, things are happening to him, and he's just responding to them. Whereas, you know, Keira Knightley is like, no, like, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to make you feel something. Whereas Orlando Bloom is like, oh, you're making me feel something, or you're talking to me. I don't know. It just feels more so like that. But
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the parts where he is probably the weakest are when he's sort of taking the most initiative or showing the most emotion. But most of the time he's more called to, you know, he gets Jack Sparrow going, and then he's kind of tagging along, and they're like this buddy cop duo, which is a lot of fun to watch. And he's great.
I love that one shot when Norrington and the other guy who's like, that's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen, when he looks through the what do you call it, like the
telescope?
It's not a telescope though. It's like
glass.
He looks through it and he sees them stealing the ship, and Jack is like, it basically just like having Will like raise the sail,
do all the work.
do all the work, and Jack's just like motioning like higher. Will's clearly like trying so hard. Yeah. It's just like a little brief glimpse into like what their relation,
how this dynamic works.
Yeah, it's so great. I love it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or the part where Will is like, no, my father was not a pirate, and he goes to draw his sword, and Jack just like moves one little rope, and then the big mast swings over and like completely knocks him off the boat.
Yep.
Like, he's not a threat at all.
Yeah, no. And Will's like, yeah, you ignored the rules of engagement and and you cheated or whatever, in a fair fight I'd kill you. And he's like, well, that doesn't give me much reason to fight fair then, does it? Like, I will say, I think my favorite acting moment, honestly, of Orlando Bloom in this whole movie is the moment when Mr. Brown is like, just doing my civic duty, sir. And then
so good.
Orlando Bloom just does this little like look of like, okay.
Yeah, he's like, well, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
He just completely stole credit for capturing Jack Sparrow after I did all the work.
I think that's like his best acting moment
It's
in
great.
this whole
Yeah,
movie.
he has a
Because
couple.
I believe it, and it's funny, you know?
Yeah, he has a couple nice little wordless moments, actually. Like the moment where he's first introduced in his, grown up form, where he's waiting at the governor's house, and he's like touching this lamp to look at it, and then it breaks, and then he's like looking around trying to figure out what to do, and then he just hides it. Always makes me laugh. It's such a great way to introduce the character.
I'll just put it into this little like intricate, beautiful garbage can made of glass.
Yeah, no one will notice.
No one will notice.
Or later on in the movie when he's talking to Mr. Gibbs about Jack, and he's like, oh, he went mad. Is that the reason for all that? And then he does this imitation of Jack Sparrow's like wavy hands and everything. It's really funny.
Reason's got nothing to do with it.
What did he use for rope? Human hair from my back.
That's so not possible.
It makes no sense.
It's like, even if your back was entirely covered with hair, none of that is long enough to like do anything, but whatever.
All right. Well, I would love to go through the plot of this movie just because
It's literally been 53 minutes.
I know. Just there are so many little moments that I just because it's all good. It's all good.
I would just like to say that Geneva on her outline here has a bullet point that specifically says justice for Norrington. And I'm interested to talk about that.
I wasn't sure at what point we wanted to get to that.
Whenever you want. I'm cool with whenever.
Okay. Well, let's do it now since you brought it up. So, full disclosure. Part of my long and rich history with this movie is that I had a big crush on Commodore Norrington.
That does not surprise me at all. At all.
Which will tell you a whole lot about my taste in men. Oh my goodness. And honestly, rewatching the movie, I don't think I was wrong. I really like the character because it's like, obviously he is the antagonist. We don't want to see him succeed. We don't want to see him take down Jack. We don't want to see Will go to jail. We don't want to see Elizabeth end up with anyone other than Will. So, it ends the way it should end. But I really appreciate the fact, and I don't know how much of this is writing versus, I think Jack Davenport does really well with this character, is he's very rarely actually wrong if you consider objectively what's going on. Like, the pirates are bad. They are murderers. Him trying to catch them is not a bad thing. And I do think that he genuinely loves Elizabeth. I don't think they're right for each other. I don't think they should end up with each other. But I think he does genuinely really love her. And he has a lot of integrity as a person. He doesn't bend the rules except once, and he does that because she asks him to. And when he realizes that she doesn't love him, that she loves someone else, he's willing to step aside for her and let her be happy. I think there is a lot of real, genuine, willingness to see her be happy even at his own even at the expense of making himself unhappy. And there is a lot of integrity to him, even though he is in this position of being the antagonist. So I just wanted to say a little, justice for this character. I'm not thrilled with how his, they develop his character in the next two films, but I really love him in this one.
Interesting, because I was going to say, if you are like pushing justice for Norrington, I was going to say, I think he gets his justice in the next two movies. Like, the second one, he's a little bit more of a, like, a cartoon character. But I think in the third one, he really has a great character arc, in my opinion, from the first movie going into that one. But maybe that's just me.
He has a heroic death in the third one, which I like, although I would have liked even more having him not die. I didn't like the choice to have him become disgraced between movies and basically become a pirate himself, because what I really loved about his character was his sense of uprightness and integrity. And then if you take that away, like, he's basically a different character.
That's so interesting.
But
yeah, I don't know. I just think he's very vanilla in this movie. And I you know,
he has a couple little, I also really like that he has kind of a snarky sense of humor, which to me makes him, I mean, he exists to be the bland, you know, nice, correct, romantic alternate that is eventually thrown over, which, you know, he does perfectly well. But I do like they give him a couple of lines where he'll be like, lads, you will all remember this is the day that Captain Jack Sparrow almost escaped.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can kind of laughing on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike him. Like, I don't actively dislike him. And I think he is like an important part of this movie and character. Like, he plays a very important role in terms of advancing the story and things like that. Like, I'm happy that he's here. But at the same time, I'm like, you're definitely the guy with a stick up his butt who's just kind of like, dude, like,
chill out.
Like, chill out a little bit. Like, it's really not that big of a, like, it's okay, you know, which I think he gets there at the end because he's like, we can afford to give him a day's head start, you know, like, he chills out a bit. But
yeah, he has a nice little, slightly relaxing character arc.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the things that me and my sister used to always laugh at watching this movie was the moment during his, like, not coronation, but when he's like, you know, the ceremony for when he's becoming the Commodore, you know, he's walking down this line and he's very serious. And then we have this clip of we see Elizabeth kind of struggling to breathe, but in the background, he's just like doing this weird sword performance, like pointing it up at the sky and then spinning it like a baton.
I remember seeing an interview with Jack Davenport, the actor, and he's like, I trained for 3 weeks to do all of these tricks. And then they decided not to include it and just put it in the background.
Poor guy. He gets that one moment at the end on the ship when he gets like a 5-second shot of him like sword fighting the skeletons, but that's really it.
He's competent. He didn't get to the position he's in by not being competent.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm fully confident that he's very gifted in his sword play. But me and my sister used to just always laugh at that scene because that ceremony is like so serious and he's taking it so seriously. Like, it's like, dude, you realize this is hilarious, right? Like, what you're doing is completely silly.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, so that's my 5-minute Justice for Norrington corner.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would hope that people wouldn't really fight you on that all that much, but
thank you.
I would like to say, just kind of while we're talking about performances, I just wanted to say, I kind of mentioned before that there's people that are just having so much fun in this movie, and I want to shout out Kevin McNally, who is clearly just like, him and Jeffrey Rush, I'm like, y'all are just like having,
you know, exactly who your
grand
characters
old
are.
time. Like, you guys are having so much fun, and there's this one guy who is so over the top that I'm like, yeah, it's the guy who's like, and it's you who brought us here in the first place. Like, I'm like, dude, you are so intense. Like, what? Like, I was just watching the movie and I'm like, you are just going all out on this guy, but you believe in it and you believe in what you're doing, so it works for me.
Mm-hmm. Everyone commits so hard, and that's what makes it work. That's what makes it so magical, is you never believe that anyone is other than who they are. Like, I remember watching Kevin McNally and other things, and it's just, that's Mr. Gibbs. Why is Mr. Gibbs doing something else? Like, I don't understand.
I love, I guess it's not our introduction to him because we see him in like the flashback / Elizabeth's dream. But when we first find him and he's sleeping on the pigs, when Jack Sparrow does his like thing trying to wake him up, the moment when you clearly see he's like thinking so hard, trying to understand what he just said. And then he's like, that'll about do it. But like for 2 to 3 seconds, you can tell he's like really trying to figure out what he's.
Another little great Will moment is right after that. Will pours another bucket of water on it, and he's like, why'd you do that? I'm already awake. And Will's like, that was for the smell. And Gibbs is like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. I will say the The guy, I don't actually know his name. I'm looking at it right now. It says Pintel, but for people who don't know, he's the one who everyone always says the code to him. It's always to him. But he always makes me think of he's in Seinfeld, and there's this one moment where he like runs up during a funeral that's like a very, morose, quiet, tragic funeral, and he's like, "Hey, she didn't commit suicide. She was murdered by Jerry Seinfeld." Like every time I see him, it just makes me think of that like brief moment he has in that episode of the show.
That's funny because I was just thinking I've seen Mackenzie Crook in so many other things, but I've never seen. I don't remember.
Oh no,
seeing...
it's Lee Ehrenberg, not Mackenzie Crook.
Okay. Well, no, the I was just thinking I've seen Mackenzie Crook in so many other things, but the other, his partner. I don't remember ever seeing that actor in anything else. I probably have. I just wouldn't recognize him.
Damn to the depths, whatever mutton had thought of parlay.
Yeah, I remember when I first watched this movie, the one, because a lot of the movie is just like fun and interesting. The one movie that actually scared me was the one when he steps in front of the crack in the door and is like,
"Hello, puppet.
Hello, puppet." That was
calls to us the code,
the code. But yeah, that was like the one part in the movie that scared me. But everything else I just thought was like super cool. I was like, skeletons, cool. Like they don't die, cool.
Yeah. Oh, it is very cool. I also remember, this is a really random bit of memory for someone who's basically of exactly my age, but the VHSs that we used to rent from the video store at this era, if it was a Disney film, they would always inevitably have this featurette at the beginning of it talking about this upcoming movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, and it would have interviews with the ILM people doing all the CGI effects, and they would have little clips of the pirates walking underneath the boat and climbing up the ropes to go and attack. And so that was my first like introduction to even the concept of this movie, was just this random featurette that was at the beginning of Disney VHSs of this era. I don't know if anyone out there knows what the hell I'm talking about.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. It's just a very, very strong memory.
Yeah. Anyway, should we
make
some progress?
Let's make some progress. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just there's just so many little moments again that I feel like I don't want us to miss. So I think going through the plot would just be nice.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we have this intro scene that is set, I think it's 8 years before the events of the main movie, and it's Governor Swann, who, by the way, shout out to Jonathan Pryce. This is my first introduction to Jonathan Pryce. He's great as the governor in this movie.
Yep.
And then Elizabeth Swann, his daughter, they're sailing over to the Caribbean. Norrington's on the boat. He's only a lieutenant at this point. Gibbs is on the boat as well as like some sort of sailor person. But they come across sailor person. But they come across this wreck. This ship has been like completely blasted apart and burning and is sinking and everything. And the only survivor is this little boy who's on a raft of some wood. So they take him on board. Elizabeth's looking after him, and she sees that he has this little pirate medallion, and we've learned, is like obsessed with pirate lore, like, which kind of
she's more obsessed with treasure than Will is.
She really is. No, she's just like a pirate fangirl,
Mm-hmm.
She's like read all the accounts. She's really excited about it. Her father's a little bit worried about it.
She studied the code, like
yeah. But so she takes the medallion, and then she sees off in the distance this pirate ship with black sails sailing away. And then we cut in the great little, like, her eyes closed, and then adult Keira Knightley's eyes open, and it's the present day.
She's 17.
17, which is insane.
17.
The way that her performance carries so much of this film, and she's 17 freaking years old, is insane.
Yep.
Yeah, love Keira Knightley. But yeah, so we're in the present day, quotation marks. She's waking up. She's like,
I wish this was my present day.
I know.
That'd be awesome.
She's still got the pirate medallion. She's got it hidden away, and she puts it on, and then her dad comes in to give her this dress and is like, we gotta go to Norrington's ceremony. And first of all, we established that she does not like corsets, which just wanted to give a little the way that corsets are dressed in this era is not actually historically accurate. Corsets would not have been
women
tight-laced
in
in this
London must
era.
have learned not to breathe.
It's ridiculous that Keira Knightley, Elizabeth Swann would not have already been wearing corsets. Like, what the hell? What else would she be wearing? Because they were like bras, but it's fine. Whatever. It sets up a great line later on, so we can forgive it. But we also learn that Commodore Norrington is interested in Elizabeth and is probably going to ask her to marry him. And
we also learn that Governor Swan has an incredible wig.
He does.
Well, we can't forget about this.
Yeah.
One that he's willing to risk his life fighting for at the end of this movie.
Yeah. It is like a full like Charles II, like curls upon curls upon
It's
curls.
incredible.
It's
I mean,
magnificent.
I just think about like the hairstylist, how much time they must have spent on that wig, like how many they had, that must have been really tedious work, but also probably a really fun time.
Yeah. Much appreciation to just the costuming and the hairstyles and the makeup in this movie because it's all really excellent.
Yep.
So Will arrives at the house to drop off the sword
which is
supposedly
perfectly balanced.
Perfectly
It is
balanced.
Perfectly balanced.
He does this cool little flip with it, which if you watch the bloopers to this movie, which I have many times, there's like 10,000 bloopers of him trying to do the flip and failing. But yeah, there's this nice little moment where the governor's like, tell your master, that I really appreciate his work. And Will gets his look on his face where he's like,
I shall.
And it's like, clearly the master did not create this sword. Will did, but Will does not want to give away, that fact. So he's just like, sure. Okay.
Like I said, he's just reacting, he's just kind of like, well, all right.
Yeah, he's there. But Elizabeth comes down. She's all dressed. She looks great. And clearly there's like longing going on between Will and Elizabeth because she's all like, Will, I had a dream about you last night. Call me Elizabeth.
About
Don't call me
me?
Swan. And Will's like, I can't.
He is just a doe-eyed,
Oh my
like
goodness.
little boy who has
Mhm.
no idea what to do with himself every single time he's in the presence of this person.
Yeah, it is so sweet because, and I do think they have really good chemistry because it's like she's the higher social position. She's the more forward one. She's the one who's like, I want us to be close. I want us to be friends. I want us to call each other by our first name. And Will's the one who feels like he needs to maintain some propriety between them because he's the lower class one. He has more to lose. And the governor's like slightly scandalized by his daughter, but
Just once more, Miss Swan, as always.
as always, oh, so romantic.
I will say, speaking of before Orlando Bloom's performance and moments that were good, I don't know why this just came to my mind, but I actually do like his performance in that moment when him and Keira Knightley, like when he's wrapping her hand and he kind of freaks out and he's like the blood of a pirate and he like holds his hand up to his face and slams it on the table. I'm like, ooh, gritty.
Yeah, a little bit of a darker side. here.
Let's get more of like dark-sided Will. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
Which
I
we
guess-
get a lot more of in the next two movies.
I was going to say,
but
maybe this is why you like the sequels so much, because we do get a lot of dark side Will there.
there's also just more sword fighting. I
There's
don't
a
know.
lot of sword fighting. There's that great three-way sword fight, which I always really loved. in the
So
second
good. Yeah, and it's just, they're a lot more gritty. Well, the second one, maybe not so much, because it's got grit in terms of Davy Jones, but anything that's not Davy Jones is like, we're spitting in circles on these, like,
one.
I don't even know what they are. I forget what they are, like the water wheel things. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I
I need
But
to
anyway.
rewatch those sequels. It's been a few years. I remember liking parts of the second one while also being disappointed by some story choices, but then the third one is just kind of a blur to me because I just can never tell.
Yeah.
There's so much CGI and so much double crossing, and I just completely lose track of all plot
But
threads at a certain
it's a
point.
movie. It's a movie where you should not be thinking while you watch it. Like, seriously, if you think, you're gonna tie yourself in circles, and then you're gonna be frustrated because it doesn't lead to anything in the end. Like, it's just like, oh, so we're not getting an answer to that question? Cool. Like, it's just meant to sit back and enjoy the vibes, and the more you think about it, the worse your experience is going to be. I will say, talking about the next two, one thing I do really like about this movie, which I remember even when I was younger watching these movies, I was like, why did that happen? This first movie has lots of people of color in it. And the second and third one are like all white people, except for Calypso.
Yeah, they do.
Everyone is white,
Harris, but yeah,
like we have some we have a little bit of like Asian representation in the third one, and you know, we're insinuating that some of Davy Jones's people in the second one are like Jamaican or whatever, in a way that might be controversial. I don't know, I haven't seen that movie in a while. But this movie has a lot of people of color in it that kind of just like disappears in the next two, and that is a big disappointment for me. I don't know where these actors went. They seem to be pretty well established in their roles, and obviously some of them died but in this movie. But I don't know, I don't understand why that happened, and I think it's really unfortunate because it just is dumb and doesn't make sense to me. But
yeah,
anyway.
Well, it's such a rewatching this, I'd completely forgotten that Zoe Saldana was in it. She's such a fun presence, and she's not in any, to my memory, she's not in any of the sequels. I don't know why.
She is not.
I mean, I hope the reason is just she got some great movie offers and went off to be a movie star, but it is really unfortunate because I would have loved to see her become a bigger part of the later movies.
Yeah.
Okay, so they all go to the ceremony where Norrington is being promoted to Commodore, and like Tatum said, there's just this great scene where Elizabeth is struggling to breathe in her new corset, and in the background you just see Norrington do all these sword tricks for no apparent reason. Shout out, by the way, to just the production design in this movie. Like, I'm pretty sure they built this entire fort for this movie, and it looks,
I think they did.
great. Yeah, it looks so good. So afterwards, Norrington takes Elizabeth up to this really high perch. Don't know why he decides to do this, but he's proposing to her, and he's like, oh, you know, I've always loved you, and like, I want to marry you and stuff. And she's like dying because she can't breathe, and he turns his back and she just falls right off.
He's like, I can't breathe either. I'm so nervous.
I know.
Well.
He's like, yes, I'm a little nervous as well, which is really funny. But while all this has been going down, Jack Sparrow.
Oh my gosh,
has the
such
greatest
a great
entrance,
introduction. Yes,
possibly the greatest character introduction in movie
So
history. Is he's on like the top mast, and the music is playing. It's all like, you know, exciting and heroic and everything. And then he looks down. He sees that there's water in the bottom of his boat. And so he jumps down, and then it pulls out, and you see he's in this tiny little boat.
That's like leaking and
like leaking.
Like literally it is in the process of sinking. Like,
and then he's on the mast, and he's just proudly standing there as the boat is sinking and going into the dock, and it just perfectly lines up where it stops, and it's just the mast sticking out of the water, and he just steps right off onto the dock. It's so well timed.
I really like that introduction, not just like, you know, the whole boat and everything, but when he takes that first step and we're first introduced to his walk. I don't know, it's just
so distinctive.
It's so well established of like, we know who this person is, like right away.
Yeah. And we also instantly have that part where the dock, like, you know, whatever administrator mans the dock, he comes up and he's like, you needed to pay a shilling to tie up your boat here, even though the boat is at the bottom of the
and Jack like
bay.
Turns around, looks at it, and is like, seriously? Like, yeah. Really?
But Jack just like bribes him. He's like, oh, my name is, you know, here's
what did we say to 3 shillings, and we forget the name.
That's right. Welcome to Port Royal, Mr. Smith. And it just sums up in one go, you know, this guy, he's a scallywag. He can scam his way out of everything. He has incredible luck. He also knows exactly what he's doing. You just act confident and get away with anything. Yeah, it's perfect. It's a perfect introduction.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, while the ceremony's happening, he's trying to scam his way onto this ship that he like, there's this just great conversation that he has with these 2 British guards where he's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to steal the ship so I can go and pillage and plunder. And they're like, no, you're not. If you were, then you wouldn't have told us. No, I think he's telling the truth. What? And like the way he just confuses
unless of course
them,
he knew you wouldn't believe the truth even if he told it to you.
Yeah. The way he just confuses them, and then like it cuts away in the next scene, you see them just gathered around, wrapped while he's telling them stories. It's just so great. But yeah, so Elizabeth faints, falls in the water, Jack, since he's down at the boat, sees it.
I love how he goes, he's like, will you be saving her? I can't swim. He's like, pride of the King's Navy, you are. Like,
yeah. So funny.
Do not lose these.
Yeah. So he jumps in, he saves her, but very importantly, the medallion, the pirate medallion she'd been wearing, when it hits the water, it causes some sort of tremor, and we see that the wind changes when that happens.
A signal.
Mm-hmm. There are like these pirate skeletons that have been hanged out, and you can see them drifting in the wind, which is very cool. So Jack takes her to shore. Instantly, everyone's trying to put Jack in prison, and Elizabeth's like, no, what are you doing? Like, this man just saved me. Don't put him in prison. You should be thanking him. And then Norrington's like, all right, thanks are in order. And they go to shake hands, and then he finds Jack's little pirate brand, and he's like, all right, hang him.
I also like his Jack Sparrow tattoo. I think it's cool.
It is very cool. Yeah. So Jack manages to escape by using Elizabeth.
We also establish here that Jack Sparrow insists every time that he be called Captain Sparrow.
Jack Sparrow. I don't see your ship. I'm in the market, as it were.
As it were. He said he'd come to commandeer one. These are his, sir. Sorry, I literally, like, I feel like your brain remembers, like, actors that are on the screen for 2 seconds, whereas my brain is like, I can remember any single line from any movie I've ever seen, which is like worthless space in my brain. Like, why am I taking up so much space? But like, I could literally quote this entire movie from start to finish.
Roughly equally useless, but also great. Yeah, there's also that great he's like, a compass that doesn't point north, pistol with only one shot, and he pulls out the sword and he's like, and I half expected it to be made of wood.
Yep.
Yeah. So Jack escapes doing like a cool, he's got the handcuffs on.
Wait. That's when we have the line when he's like, you are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of. And then it goes, but you have heard of me.
Which is a great comeback, gotta say.
It is a great comeback. It's like the fact that you've heard of him at all, like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So yeah, he escapes. He somehow figures out to grab onto one rope and then push one little lever, and then all of a sudden the rope is flying up in the air and he's flying around. How convenient. Yeah. That's classic Geneva watching this and thinking, maybe my life, if I make the right choices, my life could one day bring me to the point where I am in this situation.
Okay. I genuinely hope that for you.
Thank you. Never give up hope. Never give up on your dreams.
I believe dragons are real and I will find one someday. Okay. So
yeah, so I think we have our dreams are aligned. So Jack, he goes and escapes into, by coincidence, the blacksmith shop where Will has just arrived, and Will has heard about what happened. He's like, you threatened Miss Swann, and Jack is like,
only a little.
Only a little.
I love that line when he like does that thing with the sword. He's like, only a little.
Yes. And so Jack is basically like, oh, this young upstart, I'm going to give you a little fencing lesson on my way out. And so they start sword fighting. But it turns out Will, who makes all of these? I do. And I practice with them 3 hours a day.
3 hours a day. You need to find yourself a girl, mate.
Yes. It's so good.
I practice with them 3 hours a day because when I meet a pirate, I can kill it.
Let me call it, not him. It.
Yep. Hey, it could be a her.
Yeah, you never know. But this, oh my goodness, this is, to my mind, genuinely one of the greatest sword fights ever put to film. It is so well done. The choreography is amazing. The interplay between the two of them and how Jack is kind of, oh, I step here and you step there. He's sort of coaching Will a little bit on the way. And it kind of becomes increasingly chaotic as Jack is getting more desperate and Will is getting more desperate to stop it. And all of a sudden they're going on the wagon and like bouncing up into the into the rafters, and then they're fighting in the rafters, and then they come back down. And
it kind of reminds me of the sword fight in Princess Bride, where like
another one of the greatest sword fights ever made.
Yeah, where it's like they start out kind of fighting, but then man, I haven't seen the movie. Why am I forgetting his name?
Wesley or Inigo Montoya?
Wesley is kind of like toying with him a little bit and like cracking all these little jokes while they're playing, and then it just escalates to this thing where he's doing.
I'm not left-handed. I'm not left-handed either.
Yeah, and I don't know if people know this term if they're not gymnasts, but like he starts doing giants like on this bar, you know, it just like escalates so much. And obviously this movie, like it's different choreography, but it kind of gives me a similar sort of energy. You know, it's like the choreography is great, but also we've got this cool like playful aspect to it as well.
Yeah, playful is a really good way to put it. And I always think that the best fight scenes, particularly fencing scenes, because it is just two characters who are facing each other down, it can't just be really nice choreography. There has to be breaks, there has to be dialogue exchanges, there have to be choices that are being made that develop who these characters are and what their relationship is to one another, and this scene does that so well.
You raped her! You murdered her! You killed her children! Wait. Say her name. Who gave you the order?
Wait, which is this from?
Geneva. It's from the sword fight between Prince Oberyn and the Mountain.
Oh, of course.
Their duel when they're fighting for Tyrion's freedom.
See, I've never been able to bring myself to rewatch that scene.
It's a trial by combat.
Oh my gosh, and it ends in the worst way possible.
It's so good.
It's so
anyway,
good.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Prince Oberyn.
Mm-hmm. Game of Thrones reference for anyone who's not sure what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or
okay.
if you read the books, A Song of Ice and Fire. Either one's fine.
Yes, there you go. Where were we? Oh, yes. So, yeah, they fight. Jack finally plays the dirty trick on Will. He slices some sand or something that goes all over Will. And, but then... Oh, it's like just then is when the soldiers break in and the blacksmith who had been like drunk in the corner asleep the entire time
Mr. Brown
wakes up. Yes. And bashes Jack over the head with the bottle. And then they come in and they're like, "Thank you, Mr. Blacksmith." And Will's like, "Oh, well, okay."
Yep.
Yeah.
"Just doing my civic duty, sir."
"Lads, I will trust you remember this is the day that Captain Jack Sparrow almost escaped.
Take him away. I also love how incredibly chill Jack is in the prison. Like he's just hanging out, man.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he has been lucky his entire life, and so he's just like, nope, something's gonna turn up.
Something's gonna happen.
Get me free. I don't need to worry too hard about it. And you know what? He's right.
He is very right.
So I think it's after this, right? Pretty much right after this that the Black Pearl attacks. Yeah, so which is a great scene all on its own. So they sail in at night. It's like all cloudy. The clouds are covering the moon, which is very crucial. And they start firing off cannons, and they're landing on the shore, and people are running around and screaming. And they come up to the governor's house to get Elizabeth. And I've always loved the scene of Elizabeth and her maid. The maid's like, "They're gonna kidnap you. You're the governor's daughter."
Well, the thing is like, I love how this maid gets this moment where she feels like she genuinely like knows what's going on. And I'm like, girl, that's not at all what's happening. Like,
well, she's not wrong. They want to kidnap her. It's not, well, I mean, it's just not because she's the governor's daughter.
Yeah. It's like they're not, first of all, she has no idea that they're coming for her necessarily. But then she's like, "You're the governor's daughter." And it's like, that's not what's happening here. But she says it so confidently. And also strangely. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a weird delivery of that line.
But yeah, so she manages to escape and presumably goes to the fort and warns them that they were after Elizabeth. But Elizabeth has this really great moment where she she takes the little the oven like coal heater thing that goes in the bed to keep the bed warm, and like,
I need one of those.
I know, right? Whacks the pirates over the head with it and then opens it up so that the coals fall on them, and then she runs off, and she almost manages to escape, but she does
she invokes the right of parley.
Yes, yeah. So she's found in the dining room and she goes, "Parley!" And then she just starts quoting all the code, and they're like, "Wait, why do you know all of this?"
Yeah.
So they take her to the ship where she meets Barbossa, and crucially, this has been in the town, like, you know, fighting, trying to save the townsfolk, and he sees her being carried off, and he's like, "No, Elizabeth!" But then he gets bonked on the head before he can go after her. So she's taken to the ship. She instantly is like, all right, I'm here to establish negotiations with the pirates. Like, she is such the daughter of a politician. She's just like, I'm going to, negotiate the cessation of hostilities or whatever the really long line terms that she has. And, oh man, I love her exchange with Barbossa so much.
I really love how smart and clever Barbossa is. Like, you really understand, you can see the backstory as to why he was chosen as the new captain after they, had the mutiny, because we have these moments twice where like people are trying to negotiate with him and he does acquiesce their request, but in a way where he's like, but you didn't specify, like, you didn't actually, we told you that we would leave here, but we never agreed that I would take you back to shore. Like, so I must do, that was not a part of agreement. Therefore I must do nothing. And then we see later on, Will's like, Elizabeth goes free. And then he's like, yes, we know that one. Anything else? And then they let them go. And he's like, I agreed she'd go free, but you were the one who failed to specify when or where.
Yeah, and he's fair-minded.
Yeah. And I just love how, he's just this really clever guy. And clearly, Elizabeth is this very smart, intelligent woman who's very informed. But Barbossa goes toe to toe with her because
she's out of her depth here.
And he's like, we're not but humble pirates. Can you use simpler words? And then she starts using simpler words. And then later on, he starts using really complicated phrases.
He's like, we're not but humble pirates. And she's like, she says what she wants. And he goes, I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request. It means no.
Yes. Yeah. He's such honestly, like, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, and maybe it's because I've seen so many like versions of Jack Sparrow at this point that it feels a little bit old. But I think that Barbossa is my favorite character.
Oh, Barbossa is 100% my favorite character.
Like, I really like him a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that they brought him back.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Little does Elizabeth know in this moment that someday he will be the one to marry her and Will while they are fighting in a crazy tsunami storm that was caused by Calypso as all of the ships are crashing into the sea.
Little could they have known how life would treat them. Yeah. So they basically, Elizabeth has figured out that what they want is the little pirate medallion that she has. They ask who she is, and she doesn't want to give her real name. So she says that she's Elizabeth Turner. But this is very crucial because we'll find out later the pirates are also looking for the descendant of William Turner. But they don't know who that child is, if it's a boy or a girl. So they assume her last name's Turner. She's got the medallion. She's got to be the daughter of William Turner. And so they're going to kidnap her as well. And they agree to, like you said, they agree to stop attacking the town, but she never negotiated them putting her ashore. So they're not going to do it. So they sail off.
And that's why there's no sense to be killing her yet.
Oh man. Okay. So Will wakes up the next morning. He's like, Elizabeth's been carried off by the pirates. We got to go save her.
That's not good enough.
Yeah. Norrington is like, trying to calmly establish some sort of like, all right, we got to rebuild our fortifications. We got to go after the pirates. We're doing this by the book. And Will's like, no, let's go negotiate with Jack Sparrow. He's a pirate. He must know where the pirates all go. Norrington's like, what are you talking about?
He's not wrong.
No, if I was Norrington and Will came in and was like,
valid.
Yeah, if Will came in and was like, you have one pirate in custody. We were just attacked by other pirates. Obviously, that one pirate can help you get to the other pirates. I'd be like, no, not all pirates. Like, clearly they left him in prison, so Jack Sparrow is not a part of their crew, and you're just a blacksmith. Like, you have no fighting experience. Like, why are you trying to dictate policy to me? Like, get out of here.
Oh, so you're on Norrington's side here.
Well,
I think that Will's proposal is completely legitimate. I don't think it's dumb.
I think Norrington, obviously, Will is correct, but I think from Norrington's perspective, it makes complete sense that he dismisses it. Because it's like, no, there's no reason to think that would succeed. It does because it's a movie. But, like, objectively, if this was reality, I can see why he'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. So Will decides to take matters into his own hands. And he goes to Jack Sparrow in prison and is like, hey, I helped build these bars, so I know the secret code to, like, let them...
Which is leverage? Like,
leverage.
Okay.
Glad that no one else ever figured that out.
Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, I can get you out of here if you help me rescue Elizabeth. And Jack, he agrees once he realizes who Will is, once he learns Will's last name, because he knows that the Black Pearl pirates are going to be after Will because he's the actual Turner. So, but he doesn't tell Will this yet. So he's like, okay. So they break out, sneak off. There's a great moment where I think this is actually a reference to the Crimson Pirate, the Burt Lancaster movie that I mentioned earlier, where they take this overturned rowboat and use it to walk along the bottom of the ocean, which is very cool.
When I was a kid, I did not understand that at all. I was like, how is this working? This doesn't make sense. And I get it now, but it really frustrated me when I was young. I was like, this is a cheat. Like, you can't do this. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's very cool. I don't know how well it would work in actuality, but like with the buoyancy.
We should try it.
We should
you and I
definitely
should try it.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So Jack puts together this really complicated plan where they try to steal one ship and then the British go after them, but while they're like taking back the ship, they sail over to the first ship, which has already been made ready to sail, and then sail off with it. And it's pretty clever. I don't know how it works. It doesn't make any sense that it works, but it's
Can I just say, there's a lot of instances in this movie where everyone leaves the ship.
It doesn't make any sense.
And then people like who go to steal the ship, they have a really easy time of doing it because everyone left. I'm like,
yeah.
When someone attacks you or when you're at war or whatever, like, you should all not be leaving the ship every time. And that happens several times in this movie, whether it's like the pirates or, you know, the government or whoever. Like, there's several moments when it's like, oh, something's happened. Everyone leave the ship. I'm like, yeah. Stop doing that. This is a poor strategy.
I know. I'm pretty sure it's standard practice. If your ship is in the middle of the ocean, there should be at least one person on it. Like, what if something happens? Like, come on.
Well, I feel like, I mean, some of the times there's two people left behind or whatever. Like at the end when Elizabeth breaks onto the ship to free, you know, her pirates from her crew. It's like they left two people behind.
There's a core guard there. Yeah.
But two is not enough.
Yeah.
Like, you should leave at least like 15 people. I don't get it.
I know.
And it happens over and over again in this movie.
But fortunately, they don't leave anyone, so Will and Jack can just sail on off. And then we have that great
Commodore Norrington, for helping us make way.
We
would have had a hard time of it by ourselves.
Yeah. Norrington's assistant is like, that's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen. And Norrington's like, so it would seem. He's so mad. All right, so they sail off. They head to Tortuga because they need to pick up a bigger crew. But on the way, Jack explains to Will that Will is the son of a pirate named William Turner. And Will does not react very well to this. But Jack is like, well, you know, in fighting, there's only two options, what a man can't do and what a man can't do. I could, you know, throw you off this ship, but I can't make my way to Tortuga all alone, and you could accept that your father's a pirate, or you could not. And Will's like, okay. Let's see. So they head to Tortuga. That's where we meet up with Mr. Gibbs again. And Jack explains to Gibbs all about how Will is the son of William Turner, and he's going to use that fact as leverage so that he can get what he wants from Barbossa. I don't remember at what point we learn exactly the fact that Jack used to be the captain of the Black Pearl and Barbossa led a mutiny against Will, and the whole backstory of
we learn when Gibbs explains it to Will.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like they're on the ship and Will's kind of asking, he's like, okay, he's got this compass. He seems really driven to go to this place. Like, what gives? Like, I want to save Elizabeth, but what is his motivation? And Gibbs is like, well, let me tell you about the lore of Captain Jack Sparrow.
Okay, gotcha.
We have to mention also that at Tortuga, Jack does get deservedly slapped by several women.
Yes. Which becomes a recurring thing throughout the movies. But yeah.
And Will is like clearly so uncomfortable in this place.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know how to interact with this. This is just so much.
Him in the like brothel bar place where Jax put him on, like, all right, keep a lookout while I go talk to Mr. Gibbs. And this I guess prostitute who's working in this tavern come up to him and is like, hey, and he's like,
he's like, I don't know how to interact with you.
I don't know
what's going
on. Yeah. So while all this is happening, Elizabeth's on board the Black Pearl, and we hear she has dinner with Barbossa, and Barbossa explains what the treasure is, which the treasure is this like cursed Aztec treasure, which when you take pieces of it, you're condemned to live a sort of half existence. And so the crew of the Black Pearl took the treasure. They didn't believe the curse, but after a while they started to realize that the curse was real. And so for the last 10 plus years, they've been trying to collect every piece of treasure that they've spent all throughout
888 identical pieces.
Mm-hmm. And they've got them all except for one, which is the one that Elizabeth had. And to lift the curse, not only do you need the actual piece of treasure itself, you need the blood of the person who took it. And since they had
it's very lucky that all of the other 887 people were still alive.
I know, right? Well, I'm assuming that one person can take multiple.
True.
It's not 887 people. It's just that many pieces. I guess Will Turner only took one piece for himself. I guess. But anyway,
he was a good man. He was a good pirate, so he only took.
Although, I guess actually he could have taken more. It's just that we need his blood. We just have one piece left, but we also need his blood. Anyway. Yeah, little nuances of pirate lore. But yeah, so they need his blood. Since they're assuming that she is his daughter, they're going to need her blood. I guess they don't explain that to her at this point because she doesn't tell them that she's not the child. But anyway, Elizabeth like freaks out and tries to stab Barbossa, but Barbossa's like, he pulls the knife out and it's covered in blood and he's like, ah. And then she like runs outside and all of the pirates are out in the full moon. They're all skeletons. And it's great. She's running around and she gets like she falls
being
down,
thrown in the air by people that are like,
and like caught by one that's swinging on a line. And she's screaming and everything. And
I love that moment with that one guy where like she pulls the like the steering wheel or whatever you call it, and his head pops off and then he puts it back on. He's like, like it's so cool.
And then she like runs back into Barbossa and he gives that line that I gave the quote at the beginning, and he like pops the cork off a bottle of rum and starts drinking it, and you can see all the rum dripping down his insides because he's a skeleton and everything. And it's
I did have a thought while watching this. I was like, how do they talk when they're skeletons if they don't have tongues?
Doesn't make any sense.
Like,
well, how do they move? They have no muscles.
If their tongues like how does this work?
No, it doesn't. It's supernatural. Don't think too hard about it. But yeah, it's great. It's great. I love it so much. Even though the CGI is like, it's clearly early 2000s. I think it's
aged well. Like it could look so much worse than it does.
It could. It's true. It's
like
true.
It does. It obviously looks old and dated, but in my opinion, it doesn't look laughable. It's not like, oh my gosh, this is a bunch of weird like computer-oids just kind of walking around. Like it's convincing for me.
It probably helps that by design the skeletons are always going to be at night and kind of half in shadow. So that was probably a very smart choice on their part, because that also hides a lot of sins.
I think skeletons are a little bit less detailed than like a human, like, you know, the intricacies of the muscles and how the eyes move and eyebrows when they smile and all that stuff. It's like, no, it's just bones. It's really just bones.
Yeah. They already look so inhuman. They already look so creepy. Anyway, all right. I'm kind of like forgetting the exact order of things, but the Elizabeth and the crew of the Black Pearl arrive at the island and they do the ceremony where and he like Barbossa dramatically takes out this knife.
By blood undone.
He takes out this knife as if he's about to slit her throat, and then he just takes her hand and makes a little cut on it.
Yep. Waste
like,
not.
that's it. He goes, waste not.
Waste not.
Which is great.
Yep. And then the next time Pintel's like, oh, it's no big deal, just a prick of the finger, a few drops of blood. And then the guy's like, oh, no, she's only half Turner. We'll spill it all. Oh, well, I guess there is reason to fret.
Oh man, this movie's so funny is the thing. This is one of the things that I think makes it so successful. And I know you disagree, but I'm not as crazy about the sequels as you, and a big part of it is because I think it starts to lose sight of the lightness and funniness of the first one. I think they get too dour.
I mean, this is the best of the three, I think. I mean, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so they do the ceremony, but they are not turned back into humans. They are still cursed, which is demonstrated.
The curse is still upon us.
Yes.
That
Wait,
one
he's like,
guy.
wait, did it work? How do we know? Barbossa pulls out a pistol and just shoots Pintel right through the chest, and he's like, you're not dead. No, I'm not. He shot me.
He shot me.
So Elizabeth,
and then we get that great line later where he's like, that one guy who's super intense, like, and it's you who brought us here in the first place. It's like, dude, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're all
chill
clearly
out.
on the edge of mutinying against Barbossa, because Barbossa's the one who led them to be cursed in the first place, which, you know.
Yep. Which, like, I feel like this is another one of those things where I need to not think about it very hardly. Or, like, because, you know, Barbossa has this thing where he's like, if anyone here dare challenge me, like, let them do so. And I'm like, well, you can't kill him. So, like, you guys could sword fight for someone to be captain, but no one's gonna die. So, like,
yeah. I mean, I guess the most they
I don't
could
think
do
a sword
is,
fight is gonna determine, like, who's gonna be captain.
Yeah. I guess the most they could do is physically overpower him and send him down to Davy Jones' locker. But I guess they haven't gotten to that point yet.
Or maroon him on an island.
Oh, or that. So Jack and Will arrive, and Will...
But if they maroon him on an island, he could just go down to the depths of the water and walk, because...
Just walk his way off.
Yeah, just it might take him a long time,
yeah,
but...
you know, he'd get there eventually. Yeah, so Jack and Will arrive. Will, like, realizes that Jack is planning something. He doesn't know exactly what, but he knocks out Jack and he goes and rescues Elizabeth herself. Jack is then captured by the crew of the Black Pearl, but he's like, hey, I've got this leverage. I know why her blood didn't work, and if you keep me alive, we can bargain.
The girl's blood didn't work, did it? He's so sassy.
He's so the part where he's caught. He's like caught by the pirates, and he's like, and they're like,
parsnip, partner.
Parlay, that's the one.
I feel like he is always one step ahead of everybody, but purely by chance.
Purely by stupid dumb luck.
Yeah, it just happens that he always happens to be one step ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
But I love how he plays it. Like that one moment, he's like, the girl's blood didn't work, did it? You know?
Yeah, and Barbossa's so mad because he really wants to kill Jack. And he's just like, dang it.
Yeah, and then we have that moment later, like Jack is just so sassy. We have that moment later when they're on the ship and he says to Barbossa, he's like, you know, it's kind of great that you marooned me on that island, because if you hadn't done that, I would have an equal share in this curse, same as you. Then he takes a bite of the apple. He's like, funny old world, isn't it? And then he offers them the apple and Barbossa's like, yeah.
He's so sassy. Yeah, it's great. So Will goes back to the ship with Elizabeth, leaving Jack behind. Jack has been captured by the pirates, but he's trying to negotiate for his life and also the return of the Black Pearl. Black Pearl is chasing after the ship with Will and Elizabeth on it because they have the pirate medallion, which does not end up working. They can't outrun them because the Black Pearl is too fast. But we do get a nice little moment of Elizabeth really being a very talented boat captain. Like, she has all these really great ideas about, you know, here's how to make the boat go faster. If that doesn't work, we throw the anchor over and we make a stand. So they do their best, but it doesn't end up working. The pirates capture the boat and they blow it up, and Will had been trapped below deck, so they think he died for a minute, but then he comes up and he's like, Elizabeth goes free. All right, what are your conditions? Elizabeth goes free. Yes, we know that one. What about anything else. Which is very
We
funny.
can't forget about they have that moment with the really dim sexual lighting when they almost
of
kiss.
course, yes.
Which clearly, like, it's so funny. Like, I feel like this is the first moment when we see that, like, Elizabeth is actually opening up and acknowledging, like, I want this too, you know? And Will is he's always so eager. He's like, Elizabeth, and like leans in and really, you know, and then she literally like takes his hand and puts it like directly onto her chest. I'm like, obviously she's wanting to show that like that's where the medallion is, but I don't think that's the, like, she didn't have to put his hand there.
I mean,
she
she's
could've
been
just,
after
like,
him the whole movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so technically, like, she's using that. It's like the putting the arm, like the yawn to just put the arm over the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like you're justifying letting him put his hands on your boobs because of the medallion that happens to be sitting there.
Well, and like that's right after he's been bandaging her hand, and then he finishes, and she's like, "Don't stop."
And he puts a little bow on the top.
bow on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I needed to make sure we acknowledge
Yes,
that
no, thank you. That is a crucial
extremely
scene.
hot sexual tension moment.
It is a crucial scene because that's also where Will learns that who they're after is him, because his father was the pirate. He's after the blood, my blood, the blood of a pirate, the blood of a pirate. Yes.
Yes. Then Elizabeth is like, okay, clearly you need your space.
Yeah.
I'll step out.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, so yeah, their crew is captured by the pirates, and what happens is Elizabeth and Jack get stranded on an island together, which is the same island in which Jack had supposedly been stranded and escaped from years before.
He was there for 3 months, the legend said.
Yes.
But then we discovered that he actually was only there for 3 days.
Yeah, lying on a beach, drinking rum.
Yep. He spent 3 days lying on a beach drinking rum. Welcome to the Caribbean, love.
That whole little sequence of the two of them on the island is just, it's so great how, like, she's all excited because she's like, all right, Jack, you know, you're this famous Jack Sparrow. We can escape the same way you did. There are all these legends about you. And then he reveals to her, you know, he only escaped because the rum runners came by and they're apparently now out of business, so they're not going to escape the same way. And she's so disappointed.
Well, it's like a kid finding out that Santa Claus isn't real, because she's like so into pirates, and you know she's like read all these books and legends and da-da-da. So she's like, oh, Jack Sparrow, like, let's see what he can do. And then he's like, yeah, actually, I'm not the real Santa Claus. And she's like, wait, what?
But again, with Elizabeth being really smart and able to come up with really good plans, she gets the bottle of rum. She gets this look on her face like, and they cut to it's nighttime. They built a fire, and they're just both, well, Jack is clearly completely hammered. Elizabeth is only faking it, but she's very good at faking it. She's very good at faking it. They're like dancing around the fire, and they're singing the yo ho bottle of rum song. She's like completely gotten him smashed, and he wakes up the next morning and all the bottles of rum and all the trees on the island are on fire because she has built this giant column of smoke while he's gone, and he's so mad. Why is the rum gone? But why is the rum gone? First, because it's a vile drink that turns even the most respectable men into complete fools. Second,
complete scoundrels.
That column of smoke is over 10,000 feet high. The entire Royal Navy is out looking for me. Do you think there's even the slightest chance they won't see it? And then he tries to shoot her.
But why is the rum gone?
Just wait, Mr. Sparrow. Give it 1 hour, maybe 2, and you'll see white sails. And then he walks off, and he immediately sees white sails.
Must have been terrible for you, Jack. Must have been terrible. Well, it bloody is now. I actually thought it was really interesting, that line when he sees the boat, the ship pull up, and he's like, "Well, there will be no living with her after this." I'm like, "What? Like, what
are you planning to keep?
Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, did you think that? Like, what world are you living in?"
I know. Well, it's like the ending where, you know, he's saying his goodbye to Elizabeth, and he's like, "It would never have worked between us, darling." And she's like, "What?"
She's like, "What are you talking about?"
This is another thing that drove me
into Will this whole time.
Yeah. No, this is another thing that I didn't really like about the sequels, is trying to create this love triangle between the three of them, and it just never worked for me. She's never into Jack. She's only into Will.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, so they are rescued by Norrington and the governor, and Elizabeth, they just want to go straight home, but Elizabeth is like, no, Will has been captured by the Black Pearl pirates. We need to go after him and rescue him because they're probably going to kill him once they get what they want. And the way that she convinces them to do this, which is kind of out of protocol, is she agrees to marry Norrington, which I still like. The look on his face is like, clearly, I don't think you actually are saying this because you mean it, but I want to believe it. But okay.
Do it for me as a wedding gift.
As a wedding gift.
And then her dad is like so chipper. He's like,
he's so
Elizabeth,
happy.
does this mean that you're accepting his proposal? I'm like, are you not aware of anything else that's going on right now?
He is not aware of anything.
He reminds me of oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her name, but the mother in Pride and Prejudice.
Oh yes,
just
Mrs.
like,
Bennet.
oh my gosh, like engaged, like, oh my goodness. And it's like, is that really all you care about? It's like, well,
Yeah,
I mean, I have no other purpose, so yes.
We skipped over it, but when the town first gets attacked and the governor is like a quivering like ball of jello, and Norrington's like, barricade yourself inside my office, and he's like, ah, and he's like, that's an order. It's because you cannot be out here because everyone's gonna see you and be terrified. Anyway, and then Norrington. Sorry, after they make the deal to go and rescue Will, Norrington's like, tells Jack, you will accompany these men to the, downstairs where you'll supply the location of Isla de la Morta, and then you'll then spend the rest of the trip pondering all possible implications of the phrase, silent as the grave. Do I make myself clear? It's great.
Yep.
Inescapably.
That is a really great line.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so, they all converge on the island. Jack has this whole plan where he wants them to the Royal Navy to wait in their ship while and he's like, I'm going to get the pirates to row out and then you guys will fight or something like that. I get a little bit unclear about this. What I think ends up happening is Norrington doesn't trust him. So he divides his crew in two and he takes half of them onto the lifeboats to wait in another location, which ends up being really good because Jack double crosses them. But Jack himself goes into the cave and he tells Barbossa that, hey, the Royal Navy's waiting outside to kill you once you've broken the curse, so why don't you kill them first, take the ship, then break the curse, and then you'll have two ships. You can call yourself Commodore. I'll buy you a hat, a really big one.
I love the complete like shock, and it's almost like it almost looks like he's about to laugh, but like when Jack shows up and Barbossa's just like, it's not possible.
Yeah,
like
how
did this
we
happen
left you there
twice?
like 48 hours ago.
And Jack's just like, not probable.
Yeah.
But like Barbossa's reaction of just like, he almost looks like he's gonna laugh. He's just like, I don't understand. I've marooned
How do you keep
there
doing
twice.
this?
Like, how are you here right now? I
Oh
don't
my
get
goodness.
it.
It's so good. So this whole thing all along has been Jack trying to maneuver himself into a one-on-one confrontation with Barbossa, where Jack secretly palms one of the medallions, the little gold pieces, which means that he is now cursed, and so he and Barbossa can fight, and Jack can't be killed and Barbossa can't be killed, so they start fighting.
So what's the point? Which I do appreciate that Barbossa brings that up, because otherwise it would be a little ridiculous, because Barbossa's like, okay, so like,
Barbossa has this really great line
here.
There's a really great line actually where Barbossa's like, so what now, Jack? Are we two beings doomed to be cursed to fight for all eternity? And Jack's like, or you could surrender.
I always forget the specifics of that line. He's like, are we doomed to be two brave men fighting until eternity, like until something in the trumpet sound?
Oh, that's
like,
right. Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what it is, but
I didn't write it down. I should have.
I do like that he brings it up, because I always think every time, I'm like, what is the point of this? Like, y'all could just sit back and have a drink and wait it out.
Yeah. I mean, I assume his plan is what ultimately happens, is that he's kind of delaying things long enough so that he can maneuver it into a place where the curse can be lifted when it's of most advantage to him.
Yeah. But Barbossa could just sit down and let Jack
just
do
be like,
that.
all right, poke me. Like, I'm not going to do anything.
Like, I don't care.
I don't care.
You'll tire yourself out eventually.
So Barbossa by this point has sent the pirates after the Royal Navy, and he's like, gents, take a walk. So instead of rowing out so the Royal Navy can actually see them, they go walk underwater, and it's this really cool CGI shot of all these skeletons underwater, and there's a light coming through, and they're all like...
I thought that was so cool when I was a kid. I really like how this final fight sequence, we have all of these moments where like there's little bits of moonlight coming through, and it's like they didn't have to add that because it probably makes it really complicated having to add this like animation for brief moments that like matches up with their movements when they step out of the moonlight. Like, they didn't have to do that, but they did, and it's really minor details, and it works really well. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. The way that the cave is set up, there's chunks in the ceiling, so most of the time when you're in the cave, you appear as human, but then every time you step into this patch of light, you become a skeleton, and it's really cool. So there's a lot of fighting going on. The Black Pearl crew attacks the Royal Navy and is like completely slaughtering them.
Can I just say, it's very strange to me that the people on the boats don't hear anything until the bell starts ringing.
I know.
You know what I mean? I'm like, there's gunfire, there's shouting, there's swords. Like, that sound carries over open water. Like, why are you waiting until you hear a bell? Like, I mean, whatever. Don't think about it too much. But it's another one of those things that I'm like, they would have gotten back to the ship a lot faster.
No, that is an excellent point. I don't know if they're supposed to be in another location where the sound doesn't carry as well, but yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, the Royal Navy are getting slaughtered, except for the people in the boats. Elizabeth sneaks off the Royal Navy boat before the fighting starts, and she goes to rescue the Jack's crew who are being held prisoner on the Black Pearl. And then she's like, all right, guys, we're going to go after Jack and Will. And they're all like,
I mean, I agree with them. I'm like,
what's in it for them?
Maybe loyalty towards Jack, but like they've
really
known
owe
Will
Jack
for like
anything.
4 days. Like,
Gibbs is the only one who had a prior relationship with Jack. Like, the rest of them just signed on for this one mission. Yeah.
Yeah. Zoe Saldana's like, I've got my ship. So like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm going to get out of here.
Well, there's the recurring thing throughout this film of, the pirate code says he who, falls behind gets left behind. And it's that kind of thing of like, there's no honor among pirates,
And also the continued theme of people calling the code guidelines.
That's
they're,
right.
They're more like guidelines anyway.
Than actual rules.
Yep.
They're more like guidelines anyway.
And then at the end, Gibbs is like, we just thought them to be more so guidelines. It's like, okay.
This script is so good.
That's one of those things where it's like you have to know the rules in order to break them,
Mm-hmm. Yep, like painting.
Exactly.
Anyway, lots of fighting. The governor has his own little hilarious mini plot line where he's in the little captain's room and he locks himself in, and then the skeleton like reaches his hand in and he manages to like bonk it off, and then the hand is animated on its own and is chasing after him, and he's freaking out. Very funny. Where it grabs his wig and he's trying to get his wig back.
I do love the added detail at the end when all of them, like when the curse is broken and they turn into humans, and he's just looking at like a hand in a drawer.
Yeah, and he's like, oh.
And he's like, oh no.
Oh my goodness. Fighting. Norrington hears what's going on and brings the rest of his crew back to the ship. Around when that happens, Jack and Barbossa has like Elizabeth and Will and Jack and Barbossa are all in the cavern. They're fighting each other. There's like a couple other pirates that Will and Elizabeth are fighting, and Jack manages to time it. So he gives his coin to Will. Will has both coins. He cuts his hand, does the blood, puts it back in. All the pirates are now human. At that very moment, Jack shoots Barbossa, and so Barbossa. It looks like he shot Elizabeth for a second, but then he looks down.
11 years you've carried that pistol, and now you waste your shot.
He didn't waste it. And then he opens up his shirt and he goes, I feel cold.
Which kind of breaks my heart. I do love how that moment of the movie is kind of structured and put together, because maybe this is just a me thing, but I just love the stakes and how it's shot of like all of the pieces are coming together at such a rapid time, because we have this moment a little bit earlier where Elizabeth is asking Will, like, whose side is Jack on? Like, we don't know. And then all of a sudden, in the course of like 5 seconds, it becomes very clear that he's had a plan all along. He slices his hand, throws the medallion at Will, who's standing there, and then he drops it. And it's like, it's just so much culminates and like has, I don't know, a very satisfying conclusion in this like very, you know, climactic, fast paced. And now all of a sudden it's over, you know? I don't know. I just think that particular part of the film, it's such a brief part of like a 2-hour, 15-minute movie. But I don't know. I just really like the shots we're choosing of him cutting his hand and the angle of what we see when he throws it, and Will holding his hand out and cutting to Barbossa, like, and then the gunshot, and then the whole way it's structured, because he could have dropped it and then we know the curse is over and then Jack shoots it. But like, I think it's great. Yeah. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so yeah, the curse has been lifted. Barbossa is dead. All the cursed
Barbossa's
pirates are
dead for now.
For now, yes. Thankfully, not forever. Yeah, all the cursed pirates instantly surrender. There's that one that one pirate who like drops the sword and is like, "Parley." I think it's Pintel,
Yep.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we cut to, I guess, a few weeks later. Oh, and when they come out, Will and Elizabeth and Jack come out of the cave. They see that the Jack's crew has taken the Black Pearl and they've just sailed off and left him behind. So Jack is now stranded. So
if you were waiting for the opportune moment, that was it.
Yeah. It's nice that he's really invested in Will's love life.
No, he really
You're not a
is.
eunuch, are you?
He's so obsessed with that. I'm like,
I
dude,
know.
first of all, what does it matter? Also, like, why do you keep bringing this up?
Yeah, so we cut to a few weeks later. We're back at the fort. Jack is about to be hung as a pirate. But Will, wearing the ugliest hat in existence with this giant feather.
It wouldn't be as bad of a hat if it didn't have the feather and the flower on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit much.
It's a lot. It's like he wants to distract from what he's about to do by wearing this hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he shows up, he goes up to Elizabeth, confesses his love for her, and then instantly runs back and stops the hangman from hanging Jack. And he and Jack start to fight their way out, but I mean, they're in the fort, so like almost instantly they're surrounded by 10,000 British Navy, you know, or Marines or whatever. But yeah, so Will's like, well, Norrington, or maybe it's the governor, I forget who. They're like, Will, we pardoned you for everything that you did. Why are you doing this? And Will's like, well,
That's
this
the
is...
governor.
Okay, yeah. And then Will is like, well, I realize this is my place, is between you and Jack. And then Elizabeth steps up and is like, I
As
love
is
Will.
mine.
As is mine.
As is mine.
And once Norrington realizes, you know, she doesn't actually love him, he decides to let Will go, and Jack, to let Jack go. Jack jumps off the same place where Elizabeth had fainted earlier. He just
Full
like,
circle.
He's like backing up, and then he just falls down. But then, of course, he miraculously survives. The Black Pearl has arrived, so he swims to it and goes off. And Norrington's like, well, I guess we can give them a 1 day's head start or something like that. And yeah, Will and Elizabeth are now together. And the governor has this nice little moment where he's like, so this is where your heart really lies? And she's like, yeah.
Can I just say, and I don't know if you thought this, I don't know what this says about me, but watching this last moment between Elizabeth and Will, I feel like I just feel like 8 years of pent up, like, I want to make out with her so bad. Like, the way he goes in for that kiss is so, I feel like aggressive isn't the right word, because once he gets there, it's like a sweet, gentle kiss. But he like so quickly like jumps at the opportunity. It's like, I'm just like, you have been waiting for this moment. every single second for the last 8 years. And now it is finally here, and you will waste no time.
It's a good kiss. They had kissed earlier, right, when they were in underneath the deck, and he was
No.
Oh, I could have sworn
She
that they
leaned
kissed
in.
then.
And the
Okay.
tension was there, but then he got mad about his
okay.
pirate blood.
Gotcha.
So,
So just-
they didn't
yeah.
kiss. Yeah, like I
tension
said,
had
that
been
tension,
building.
like it, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
it was built up. But
It's
I
a
also
great kiss.
I've also always found it a little bit strange. And again, I don't know what this says about me, but like maybe it's not actually that big of a deal. But the governor, like he starts walking away, but then he turns around to like stare at them and give like a little nod of approval. And I just feel like, I don't know, I don't have kids, but I'm like, if I was a parent, I feel like I wouldn't stop and like turn around and stare at my child making out and be like, you know what? Good for you. Like get some, you know? But anyway, I've always found that to be a little strange that he just like stops and turns around. I'm like, I mean, it's kind of sweet, I guess, but also like I would be incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm like, we're not gonna pretend it's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're happy ending. Will and Elizabeth are together. Jack sails off with the Black Pearl, and it's now the Black Pearl is yours. And he opens
Jack
up his...
gets his love moment too, because I really feel like
The Black Pearl is his love. Is his love
like
interest.
this final moment that he has where he's like caressing the, you know, the steering and like he looks so happy and like in love and at peace and just like, this is where I belong.
Well,
this
as
is
he
where I feel
tells
safe.
As he tells Elizabeth, what she is, what the Black Pearl really is freedom.
Yeah, and I don't know, like they turn it into this funny moment where he looks around and everyone's staring at him and he's like, okay, that's enough.
I gotta start barking orders.
Yeah, but like this little brief moment, I do think it's really beautiful to see, you know, his actual, I don't know, like the way he actually feels about this ship.
He's gotten the thing that he wanted the whole time. Like all along, all his actions have been so that to bring him back to being captain of the Black Pearl. And now he's got it.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, so that's the movie. He goes, "Bring me that horizon." Great line, and starts singing that
Drink
song.
up me hearties, yo ho,
and really bad eggs. Yeah, that's the movie. Wow, we've been talking a long time. We should wrap this up pretty soon, but I'm really glad
it's
that
a long movie.
It's a long
and
movie. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens, but I'm really glad we went through all of that because I love this movie so much. All right, so
I mean, next podcast I can just quote the whole thing from start to finish if people want.
Excellent. All right, awards and legacy for this movie. So this movie was actually nominated for 5 Oscars. Best Actor for Johnny Depp, which I find interesting that it was actor and not supporting actor. I think to me it's one of those things where it's sort of category fraud, but also like given how seismic this performance was and how it's kind of what everyone took away from this movie, it doesn't really surprise me. Best makeup, best sound editing, and best sound mixing, and then best visual effects, which I think very well deserved nomination. It did not win any of those, unfortunately. It was also
the fact
nominated.
that it was nominated, though, I think is huge. A lot of these types of movies don't get nominated like this.
Agreed. Yeah. Johnny Depp was also nominated for Best Actor at the Golden Globes Awards. The movie won Favorite Motion Picture at the People's Choice Awards. The MTV Movie Awards, I just copied these out because I thought they were kind of funny. It won Best Male Performance for Johnny Depp. It was also nominated for Best Movie, Best Comedic Performance for Johnny Depp, Best On-Screen Duo for Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom, Best Villain for Jeffrey Rush, Best Breakthrough Performance for Keira Knightley, very well deserved.
I love all of those.
The MTV Movie Awards Mexico.
Wait. Oh, okay, gotcha. I was like, why are these in Spanish?
Yeah, sorry. I forgot to write Mexico on the outline, but it won 2 awards for Mejor Look, Best Look for Johnny Depp, and then Hero Más Sexy, Sexiest Hero for Orlando Bloom, which I just thought was really funny.
It's also Héroe.
Héroe? Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Héroe Más Sexy.
It's not hero, it's Héroe.
I know there's supposed to be some accent marks on there too, but I didn't feel like trying to find the accent mark.
I'm not going to critique your Spanish writing here.
All right. In terms of critical response, it was positively received. Metacritic currently has it at 63, whereas Rotten Tomatoes has it at 80%, which I think is probably a good
63
reflection.
Feels a bit low.
It does feel a bit low.
It deserves.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where because of the genre it's in, people were like, all right, this is good. You know, it's not groundbreaking or anything. But then as time has gone on, as there have been more sequels, as there have been other movies trying to recreate this magic and failing, it's kind of become more appreciated in hindsight of like, oh no, actually this is really, really well done because it looks deceptively easy to achieve and it's really not.
Oh, I actually was going to say the opposite. I wondered if some of those reviews that are contributing to that have been written more recently and people are more jaded about the movie because of what's come after it and how like cartoonish, you know, Jack Sparrow, how worn out we are with Jack Sparrow now and knowing where these have gone.
Yeah.
I don't think one of our guesses is right or wrong, but yeah.
I didn't look into when those reviews were written. My guess is that I don't think that would be the case because I feel like I've seen a lot of, especially since this is the 20-year anniversary of this movie and there have been a lot of retrospectives of looking back on why this movie is so great kind of things. But your guess is also a good one.
Yeah, interesting. I'll have to look up the dates of the reviews on Metacritic after this.
That'd be really interesting to see. And then I just pulled one critic review from Empire magazine. It didn't have a date for when this review was written, but I'm pretty sure it was written, you know, when the movie first came out. So he writes, this is Alan Morgan. Alan Moore. Can't speak. I've been speaking for so long.
It's okay. We've been recording for a long time.
We have. Alan Morrison for Empire magazine. Pirates is a film that prides itself on lively detail and top-grade craftsmanship, but doesn't take itself too seriously. That's a lesson that nearly every one of its blockbuster rivals would do well to take on board. Audiences aren't cajoled into feeling that they should be having fun. They simply are having fun because the movie is too.
I love that. That's a good one.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that really just sums up what I love about this movie. This movie is so much fun.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. It, like you said, it's a long movie, but it just flies by because you're just enjoying yourself the whole time. If, like me and Tatum, you grew up with this movie, you could probably recite a good chunk of it by heart. And all of the different characters and repeated lines of dialogue or bits of pirate lore have probably stuck in your head a long time. And again, I think that's just really good writing and direction that understands the tone and is able to create something that's really unique and memorable. And yeah, that you just you can really engage with imaginatively and kind of keep coming back to, keep rewatching or keep playing out in your head. Yeah, I don't really know how many more ways to say, but I love this movie. I think it's excellent. I truly think it's one of the best of that adventure swashbuckling genre, especially, you know, that has come out within the last 25 to 30 years. You know, it's up there with The Mummy. It's up there with The Mask of Zorro. We haven't had a whole lot of movies, really quality movies in that genre in the last 20 years. And I'd love to see more because they're always great. Well, no, I shouldn't say they're always great. There have been some recently that have not been great. But I would love to see more that have that same level of craft and care and commitment applied to them because there's real magic in these kinds of movies. I think they're deceptively difficult to make, but when they are made right, there's nothing like them.
I feel like, you know, and we could talk about this maybe a little bit because I feel like this episode's already long, so it's just gonna be a long episode. But I found myself while watching this movie, I was thinking maybe this is just me getting older and being like, oh, when I was younger and they don't make them like they did back in the day. And it could just be a process of me getting older. I don't know. But I definitely had a feeling of, I feel like there isn't as much originality and creativity put into kids' movies anymore. I feel like children's movies have really gotten to a place where it's just like, how can we market this and make money off of it? Whereas obviously this movie, like, it's based off of a ride and it did become a huge franchise. But this first one, it almost feels like it was intended to be a standalone film and then, you know, whatever. And I just think about like the movies that came out when I was younger, they were so much fun and really innovative and interesting. And there was a lot of craft put into like how they looked and the casting of the actors and things like that. And I just feel like that doesn't happen that much anymore. It's a lot more of like, we have an algorithm, we have a system, let's just plug into it and we'll use the same look, the same themes, the same whatever, and we'll make money off of it because parents just need something to show their kids to give them a 2-hour break sort of thing. And again, like that could just be me getting older, but I think about like, you know, if I were to have kids or if I think about like my niece and my nephew, I'm just like, there's some movies that have come out in the last 5 to 10 years that I would show them because there are good kids movies that have come out. But for the most part, I'm like, I want to show you the good stuff. And again, this could just be me being older, but I'm like, they just don't, I genuinely feel like they don't make them like this anymore.
No, I agree. I mean, I was just thinking earlier today, comparing this movie to Jungle Cruise, which came out a couple years ago.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. It's also based on a Disney ride. It also stars two huge movie stars. It's, you know, sort of adventure romance. And it's not the worst movie in the world, I will say. It could have been worse. You know, people are trying hard in that movie, but it's just, I mean, it's a bit cliched to say that there's too much CGI, but there is too much CGI. Nothing seems real. The casting does not really work for the characters, even though I do like Emily Blunt and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in things where they're cast really well. They don't work particularly well to me in these roles or as a romantic pairing at all. And yeah, there's not the same level of detail or care and love and texture put into that world as there is in something like this. It really does feel like something that's created by an algorithm because it's something that sounds vaguely familiar and it has people that you're familiar with to sell tickets, you know?
Whereas this movie, there weren't really familiar people in it except for Jeffrey Rush and Johnny Depp. Like maybe if you were a super... I guess people knew Orlando Bloom.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando Bloom
Rings,
is probably like, he's probably cast because like, oh, he's hot with the young teenage girls,
yes,
you know?
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know. It wasn't this thing where like nowadays it's like, oh yeah, the kids love The Rock, you know? But it's like, back then it wasn't like, I wasn't 9 years old being like, I love Johnny Depp. Like, he's my guy, you know? It was just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Johnny Depp at that point had been mainly known for interesting indies and kind of wacky, you know, or moody, tortured characters. Like, he wasn't a blockbuster guy. After this, he became a corporate blockbuster guy and kind of started giving the same performance in every movie. But like at the time, this was a person that kids would not be familiar with, adults might, but doing this wildly original, creative thing that no one could have foreseen.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Rush as well. I mean, Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that because while watching this movie, I definitely had a sense of like, I don't know, this sounds really extreme, but I'm like, I feel bad for kids today who like don't, and you know, that's a very blanket statement because obviously like, I wish that I could be a kid today seeing the Spider-Verse movies in theaters. Like, I wish I could be a kid watching those. You know, there are great movies that are coming out for kids these days. Absolutely. But I definitely just had a nostalgia for like, I mean, it was like this, The Incredibles, like, you know, it's just like what was happening? Like, it was crazy. But anyway, I'm going to move on. I just want to make sure I mention that. So yeah, my relationship with this movie, I guess closing out, obviously I love this film. I think I quite literally could quote it from start to finish. Cause A, I've seen it a bunch of times, and B, that's just how my brain works and the type of information it retains apparently. I really enjoyed watching this again. And I think it is a testament to the quality of this movie that I put it on at 11 p.m. I'm also sick and I was tired, and I still like was awake and entertained throughout the whole thing and didn't, you know, I just think that's a testament to this movie. So yeah, it holds a very special place in my heart. It helped establish my love for like nerdy sword things at a very young age. I mean, I grew up reading Narnia, which I loved, and then I discovered Lord of the Rings, then I discovered these movies, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are the coolest things ever. I want to be that person. So yeah, I mean, it was fun watching it this time around. I had a different perspective in terms of like, this feels like way more of a kid's movie than I remembered it being, but that almost makes it more special that it like, you know, can reach lots of different people. I was shocked and quite amused by Orlando Bloom's performance. I was like, oh, I don't remember it feeling this lackluster to me in the past. But it works. And I need to watch the next two because I feel like he gets better in the next two, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But his character is also less vanilla in the next two. Anyway, yeah, that's all in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. Because I'm not going to keep going on and on. But yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm so glad that we did this. This is really fun. Even if I'm probably going to be cursing myself in a couple of weeks when I'm editing it, being like, why did you talk about so much of the plot? But no, really
it's all good. And Geneva and I, after the few weeks that we had of choosing movies where the other person was not really on board with what we chose, we've tried to commit. We've tried to commit to like, we're going to have a few episodes where we both like the movie, or at least if the other person hasn't seen it, we're pretty confident that the other person will like it. So I will use that, if I may, as a transition into what we'll be talking about next week.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of which, can you tell the people what we're talking about next week?
Yeah, so next week I have chosen for us to watch. It is a movie that Geneva, I am appalled that she has not seen it.
Shocking. Shocking and disgusting.
Yeah, I'm shaking things up because, you know, Tatum's reputation is like Tatum picks more recent movies. But I'm like, nah, I love old movies too. So I have chosen for us to watch the 1930s version of All Quiet on the Western Front. I saw this movie a few years back and I was completely blown away by it. It is an incredible achievement for its time. And I'm really excited to talk about it. And I'm really happy that I'm finally forcing you to watch it.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, so that's what we will be talking about next week.
All right. Well, until then, thanks everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at yourpigpod@gmail.com. Our theme song was composed by Joel Rushton, and our podcast graphic was designed by Kara Shin. If you like this show and want to hear more, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Until next time.
Also, Geneva, I want you to know, I fully expect you and demand that you do a Jeffrey Rush impression while you read this quote. Please do it.
I'm going to do my best. Okay. I've been mentally practicing it, but I'm really not sure what's about to come out of my mouth. So
you have to make sure you do that for too long. Too long.
Okay. Oh, all right.
You got this.